The champagne glass shattered against marble flooring, crystal fragments scattering like fallen stars across the restaurant's polished surface. Sabrina Vale, CEO, billionaire, the woman who'd built an empire from hospital beds and broken dreams, sat frozen as her date's voice cut through the elegant dining room like a blade. "You didn't tell me you were disabled." The word dripped with contempt. Every head turned, every conversation died. This was supposed to be her chance at normalcy, at love, at being seen as more than a wheelchair and a corporate title. Instead, it became the night that would either destroy her completely or change everything forever. If you want to see how this story unfolds, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. The Delaney was the kind of restaurant where silence cost extra, where conversations happened in hushed tones beneath crystal chandeliers, where waiters moved like choreographed dancers, and where the wealthy came not to eat, but to be seen eating. The tables were spaced precisely far enough apart to suggest privacy while remaining close enough for strategic observation. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, competing with the delicate clink of silverware against bone china and the whisper of expensive fabric shifting in leather seats. Sabrina Vale had arrived 20 minutes early, which was unlike her. In boardrooms, she made others wait. It was a power move she'd learned from her father, a psychological advantage she wielded with the same precision she applied to hostile takeovers and patent negotiations. But tonight wasn't about power. Tonight was about something far more vulnerable, far more dangerous than any corporate merger. Tonight was about hope. Her wheelchair was positioned beneath the white linen tablecloth at a corner table by the window, the spot she'd specifically requested. She'd learned years ago that corners offered control, walls at her back, clear sightlines to exits, no one passing behind her. The maitre d' had recognized her immediately, of course. Sabrina Vale's face had been on the cover of Forbes, Fortune, and Wired in the same quarter. At 32, she ran Valecore Biotech, a company worth $3 billion and climbing, specializing in neural regeneration research and advanced prosthetics. The irony wasn't lost on her. She adjusted the sleeve of her tailored Armani blazer, midnight blue, cut to perfection, paired with a silk blouse the color of champagne. Her dark hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and she'd spent 45 minutes on makeup that was meant to look effortless. The mirror in her penthouse had told her she looked beautiful. The mirror had lied before. Her phone buzzed against the tablecloth. Marcus Chen. "On my way. Traffic on 5th. Be there in 10. She'd met Marcus on an exclusive dating app for verified professionals, doctors, lawyers, executives, people who supposedly understood ambition, who wouldn't be intimidated by success. Their text conversations over the past 3 weeks had been promising. He was a corporate attorney, Columbia Law, partner track at a prestigious firm. He'd said all the right things about admiring driven women, about wanting an equal partner, about seeing beyond surface-level attraction. He'd also seen exactly 3 photos of her, all carefully cropped from the shoulders up. Sabrina took a sip of water, the glass cool against her palm. She'd debated telling him about the wheelchair, had drafted and deleted dozens of messages. "By the way, I should mention, no. Just so you know, I use worse. I was in an accident 6 years ago. Too much, too soon." In the end, she'd told herself that if he was the right person, it wouldn't matter. If he truly saw her, intelligent, accomplished, capable, then the wheelchair would be just another detail, like her preference for dark chocolate or her inability to carry a tune. She'd told herself a lot of things lately. Most of them were wishes disguised as logic. "Ms. Vale?" The sommelier appeared with a practiced smile. "May I suggest something while you wait? Perhaps a glass of the Chassagne Montrachet?" "Just water for now, thank you." Through the window, the city glittered with October twilight, buildings catching the last rays of sun, traffic flowing in rivers of red and white light, people moving through their lives with the kind of easy mobility she'd once taken for granted. She could still remember running. The sensation lived in her muscle memory like a phantom limb. The impact of feet against pavement, the burn in her lungs during morning jogs through Central Park, the simple, thoughtless joy of moving through space without calculation or obstacle. The accident had taken that. A drunk driver, a rainy night, a Toyota Camry that ran a red light doing 60 in a 35 zone. She'd been 26, on her way home from celebrating her first major research grant. The doctors had been honest. T12 complete spinal cord injury. She would never walk again. What followed were 2 years of hell disguised as rehabilitation, physical therapy that felt like torture, surgeries that promised incremental improvements, and the spectacular public disintegration of her engagement when her fiancé decided that loving her came with too high a cost. He'd actually said that. I signed up for a partner, Sabrina, not a patient. She'd channeled the rage into something useful, threw herself into her research with manic focus, built Veilcore from a 3-person lab into an industry leader, and locked every soft feeling behind walls so high that loneliness sometimes felt like safety. But lately, the walls had started to feel more like a prison. The restaurant's entrance opened with a subtle chime. Sabrina's heart performed a complicated stutter step as Marcus Chen walked in, tall, well-dressed in a charcoal suit, dark hair styled with expensive product, the kind of handsome that knew it. He spoke briefly with the maitre d', who gestured toward her table. This was the moment. Sabrina straightened her spine, lifted her chin, arranged her features into a warm smile that she hoped didn't look as nervous as she felt. Marcus navigated through the tables with confident strides, his smile bright and welcoming. 20 feet away. 15. 10. His eyes found hers, and something in his expression shifted. Pleasure, interest, attraction. 5 feet away, and he was already extending his hand for a greeting. Then his gaze dropped below the table line. Sabrina watched it happen in excruciating slow motion. The exact microsecond his brain processed what he was seeing. The wheelchair, partially hidden by the white tablecloth but impossible to miss at this angle. His smile didn't just fade. It collapsed, like a building in controlled demolition. His extended hand froze in midair. His entire body went rigid. You're... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Marcus. She kept her voice steady, professional, giving him a chance to recover. It's good to finally meet in person. But he wasn't recovering. He was staring at the wheelchair like it was a betrayal, a trap, an ambush. Other diners were beginning to notice, heads turning with the predatory interest of people who sensed drama about to unfold. You didn't tell me. His voice came out sharp, accusing. I didn't think it mattered. Even as she said it, Sabrina felt the familiar burn of shame in her chest, hating that she had to defend her existence, hating that she'd been right to worry. Didn't think it mattered? Marcus's voice rose, no longer concerned with the discretion expected at the Delaney. You don't think that's something I deserve to know? You let me think. You let me believe. Jesus Christ, Sabrina, you catfished me. The word hit like a slap. Several nearby tables had abandoned all pretense of their own conversations now, watching with the horrified fascination usually reserved for car accidents and public proposals gone wrong. I didn't lie about anything, Sabrina said, fighting to keep her voice level, even as humiliation crawled up her throat. Every conversation we had was honest. I'm still the same person you've been talking to for 3 weeks. The same person? Marcus laughed, a bitter sound that made her flinch. You're in a fucking wheelchair. How is that the same? Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I'd just, not care? I thought, Sabrina said quietly, that if you actually knew me, actually valued our conversations and connection, then yes, you might see past. See past? He gestured at her chair like it was evidence in a trial. This isn't something you see past. This is a fundamental misrepresentation. I came here expecting a normal date with a normal woman, and instead I get, say it. The words came out harder than she intended, all the politeness burning away under the heat of her anger. Go ahead, Marcus, finish that sentence. You get what exactly? He had the decency to look uncomfortable, but not enough to back down. Someone I can't... Look, I'm sorry about whatever happened to you, but I have a right to choose what I want in a partner. I have a right to my preferences, and I prefer someone who can actually walk, Sabrina supplied coldly. Run? Dance? Pretend to be someone I'm not so you can feel better about yourself? Someone who didn't lie to me. Marcus's voice carried across the entire restaurant now. The jazz had stopped playing, or maybe it hadn't. Sabrina couldn't hear anything over the blood rushing in her ears. You manipulated me. You wasted my time. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Everyone in this restaurant probably thinks I'm some kind of asshole because I don't want to date a disabled woman. But you know what? I didn't sign up for this. I didn't agree to this. You made that choice for me, and that's not fair. Sabrina felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart, that had been broken before, and she knew what that felt like. This was worse. This was the demolition of a hope she'd barely allowed herself to acknowledge, the confirmation of every fear that woke her at 3 a.m, the proof that maybe the wheelchair wasn't just part of her story, but the only part that mattered. She'd survived hostile boardrooms full of men who thought a woman couldn't run a biotech company. She'd survived investors who tried to oust her during her recovery. She'd survived her father's crushing expectations and her ex-fiancé's cowardice. But sitting in this restaurant with dozens of strangers watching her humiliation unfold like dinner theater, Sabrina felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Small, invisible, less than. "You're right," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I should have told you. I'm sorry I wasted your time." The apology tasted like poison, but she'd learned long ago that sometimes you had to give people what they wanted just to make them go away. She reached for her purse, ready to call for her car, ready to disappear into the October night, and add this to the growing list of reasons why hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Is there a problem here?" The voice came from behind Marcus, low and steady and absolutely certain. It didn't belong to a waiter or the maitre d' or anyone Sabrina recognized. It belonged to a man who'd appeared as if materialized from the city itself, broad-shouldered and solid, wearing a faded canvas work jacket over a flannel shirt, jeans that had seen actual labor, and steel-toed boots that had no business in a place like the Delaney. Marcus spun around, his expression shifting from anger to confusion to irritation. "This is a private conversation. Who the hell are you?" The stranger didn't answer Marcus. Instead, his eyes, a remarkable shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over water, locked onto Sabrina's face with an intensity that made her breath catch. There was something in his gaze she hadn't seen in a long time. Not pity, not discomfort, something else entirely. Recognition, maybe. Or respect. "Ma'am," he said quietly, speaking only to her. "Are you all right?" 2 words that shouldn't have mattered. 2 words that people asked all the time without meaning them. But the way he said it, with genuine concern, with the kind of presence that suggested he'd actually wait for an honest answer, made Sabrina's carefully constructed composure crack just a little wider. "I'm fine," she said automatically, the lies she'd perfected over 6 years of being definitely not fine. "She's fine," Marcus echoed mockingly, turning back to the stranger. "She's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. Now, if you don't mind—" "I do mind, actually." The stranger's voice remained calm, but something in it had gone to steel. "Sounds to me like you're done with dinner. Might be time for you to leave." "Excuse me?" Marcus drew himself up to his full height. He had maybe an inch on the stranger, though none of the breadth. "I'm not going anywhere, and you're not the manager, so unless you want me to have security throw you out—" "I'm not the manager," the stranger agreed. "Just someone who doesn't like what he's seen. The lady deserves better than this." "The lady," Marcus said with deliberate cruelty, "deceived me. So maybe you should get the whole story before you play White Knight. I heard enough." The stranger's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Heard you humiliate her in front of everyone here. Heard you act like basic human decency is some kind of burden. That's all the story I need." Sabrina found her voice, though it came out smaller than she wanted. "You don't have to. I can handle this." The stranger's eyes returned to her, and again that strange quality in his gaze, like he was seeing all of her, not just the wheelchair, not just the expensive clothes, not just the careful mask. "I know you can handle it, ma'am, but you shouldn't have to. Not like this." Marcus made a disgusted sound. "Oh, this is perfect. This is just perfect. You're actually going to let some random guy fight your battles now? How pathetic is—" Whatever else Marcus intended to say died in his throat as the stranger took one deliberate step closer. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make threats, didn't do anything except exist in a way that suggested he'd spent his life doing hard things and wasn't particularly impressed by corporate lawyers in expensive suits. "Here's how this works," the stranger said quietly. "You're going to walk out of this restaurant right now. You're going to do it with whatever dignity you've got left, and you're never going to contact this woman again. We clear?" "Or what?" Marcus tried for bravado, but it came out uncertain. "Or I make sure everyone here knows your name, your firm, and exactly what kind of man you are. See, I'm guessing a partner track attorney at... He glanced at the business card Marcus had apparently dropped on the table earlier. Whitmore and Associates probably can't afford that kind of reputation. The restaurant had gone absolutely silent. Every eye was on their table now, and Marcus seemed to realize finally that he'd already lost. His face flushed red. From anger or embarrassment, Sabrina couldn't tell. "This is insane," Marcus muttered, but he was already backing away. "Completely insane. You're both... whatever. Have a nice life." He turned and stalked toward the exit, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. The maitre d' rushed to open the door, and then Marcus Chen was gone, disappearing into the October evening like a bad dream evaporating in daylight. Sabrina sat very still, aware that she was trembling and trying desperately not to let it show. Around them, conversation slowly resumed, though she could feel the weight of lingering stares, hear the whisper of gossip beginning to spread. Tomorrow, this would probably be on some gossip blog. Tech CEO's date disaster at the Delaney. She could already imagine the headlines. The stranger pulled out the chair across from her, Marcus's abandoned seat, and lowered himself into it with the easy movement of someone whose body still did exactly what he asked of it. Up close, Sabrina could see more details. The permanent grease stains under his fingernails, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the weathered quality of his hands that spoke of years of manual labor. He was probably in his mid-30s, with dark brown hair that needed a trim and a face that would never be called handsome in the conventional sense, but had something better, character maybe, honesty. "I'm sorry I stepped in without asking," he said, his voice gentler now. "I know you didn't need rescuing, but I was walking past the window and saw what was happening, and I couldn't keep walking." "Why?" The question came out more vulnerable than she intended. He considered this seriously, like it deserved a real answer. Because everyone deserves to be treated with basic respect, especially when they're just trying to have dinner and some asshole decides to make a scene. He paused. "And because you reminded me of someone who taught me that courage looks different for different people, but it's always worth defending." Sabrina felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She did not cry in public. She did not break down in expensive restaurants. She was Sabrina Vale, CEO of Valecore Biotech, the woman who'd rebuilt her entire life from fragments, and she did not let strange men in work boots see her cry. "Thank you," she managed. Thank you. Ethan Cole." He offered his hand across the table, calloused, strong, completely honest. "I run a garage about 8 blocks from here. Cole's Auto Repair." She took his hand, feeling the roughness of his palm against her smooth skin, the firm grip that held for exactly the right amount of time before releasing. "Sabrina Vale." "I know." A small smile touched his mouth. "Saw you on the news last month. Something about neural regeneration breakthrough." "You follow biotech news?" "I follow a lot of things. Like to stay informed." He glanced around the restaurant, taking in the crystal and the gold and the deliberate luxury. "Question is, why are you still sitting in this place? Can't imagine you want to stay after all that." Sabrina looked down at her hands, at the white tablecloth, at the expensive water glass she hadn't asked for. "I haven't eaten. I was supposed to have dinner, and now..." She gestured vaguely at the empty space where her date had been. "Then let me buy you dinner." Ethan said it simply, like it was the most obvious solution in the world. "Not here. Somewhere better." "Better than the Delaney?" Sabrina couldn't help the skeptical note in her voice. "This is a 5-star restaurant." "Sure, with 5-star assholes." Ethan stood, his jacket creaking slightly. "I know a place with good food, cheap beer, and people who mind their own business. You interested?" Every instinct Sabrina had developed over 32 years of life told her to say no. He was a stranger. She knew nothing about him except that he worked on cars and apparently had a protective streak. Going anywhere with him was objectively a terrible idea. But she was so tired of being safe, so tired of following rules that seemed designed to keep her isolated. So tired of sitting in expensive restaurants with expensive men who saw her as anything except human. "Is it accessible?" she asked. "Yeah, ramp at the side entrance, good wide aisles. Owner's brother uses a chair. He made sure the place works for everyone." Sabrina took a breath, made a choice. "Okay." Okay. Ethan's expression brightened with what looked like genuine pleasure. All right then, let's get you out of here. He moved to the side of her wheelchair without hesitation, without the awkward pause most people had when they weren't sure if helping was insulting or necessary. You want me to? I can push myself, Sabrina said, then softened it with a small smile. But thank you. Fair enough. I'll walk with you. They made their way through the Delaney together, the billionaire CEO and the mechanic in work boots. And if people stared, if whispers followed them, Sabrina found she didn't care quite as much. The maitre d' looked flustered, uncertain whether to apologize or pretend nothing unusual had happened. Sabrina settled the question by handing him her black Amex. For the trouble, she said simply. Outside, the October air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. The city hummed around them, traffic, voices, music from somewhere down the block. Sabrina breathed it in, feeling something loosen in her chest. My car service is, she began, pulling out her phone, is probably going to take you somewhere quiet and expensive where you'll eat alone, Ethan interrupted gently. Come on, it's a nice night. Place is only 3 blocks. I promise the walk will do you good. The roll, Sabrina corrected automatically. He blinked, then laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. The roll. Right, sorry. Don't be. Most people don't even try to adjust their language. They started down the sidewalk, Ethan matching his pace to hers without making a production of it, his hands in his jacket pockets, his stride easy and unhurried. Around them, the city did what it did best, continued on, indifferent to personal drama, full of 10,000 other stories unfolding simultaneously. Can I ask you something? Sabrina said after a block of companionable silence. Shoot. What you said back there, about me reminding you of someone. Ethan's expression shifted, something tender and painful crossing his features. My wife, Sarah. She died 3 years ago, cancer. He said it simply, without looking for sympathy. Near the end, when she was really sick, people treated her like she was already gone, like the illness was all she was. But I saw her. Still saw the woman I married, the person behind the pain. You had that same look tonight, like you were fighting to be seen as who you actually are, not just what people decided you were. Sabrina felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry about your wife. Me too. They turned a corner, moving down a side street where the buildings were older, the storefronts more varied, the gentrification less complete. She taught me a lot about courage, about showing up even when everything hurts. I think she would have liked you. Based on 15 minutes? Based on the fact that you're out here at all. After what just happened, a lot of people would have gone home, ordered room service, and never tried dating again. But here you are. Here I am, Sabrina echoed, following a stranger to an unknown destination. My security team would have a heart attack. You have a security team? I run a $3 billion company. Security comes with the territory. Ethan whistled low. $3 billion. Jesus. And you were going to waste an evening on that asshole? Hope makes you do stupid things. Hope makes you do brave things, Ethan corrected. There's a difference. They arrived at a corner where string lights were draped between buildings, creating a canopy of warm golden light over what appeared to be a permanent food stall setup. Tables were scattered across the sidewalk, mismatched and well-worn. The smell hit Sabrina immediately. Garlic, grilled meat, fresh bread, something spiced and wonderful that made her stomach remind her she hadn't eaten. Welcome to Miguel's, Ethan said. Best street food in 6 blocks, maybe 7. It was nothing like the Delaney. The plates were paper, the utensils were plastic, and the wine list was probably just red or white, if they had any at all. But it was real in a way the expensive restaurant had never been, full of actual people having actual conversations, laughter that wasn't performative, the kind of neighborhood gathering place that existed in every city if you knew where to look. Miguel himself, a broad man with a magnificent mustache and an apron that had seen better days, spotted Ethan and waved. Ethan, ¿dónde has estado? Lucy was asking for you last week. Been busy, Miguel. Got someone I want you to meet. Ethan gestured to Sabrina. This is Sabrina. Sabrina, Miguel makes the best carne asada tacos you'll ever have. Miguel's eyes went to the wheelchair for precisely half a second before returning to Sabrina's face with a warm smile. Any friend of Ethan's is always welcome. Let me get you the good table, the one by the heater, yes? Is getting cold tonight. He led them to a table near one of the standing heaters, the warmth immediately welcome against the October chill. Sabrina positioned herself easily. The spacing was perfect, like Ethan had promised, while Miguel rattled off options in rapid-fire Spanish that occasionally switched to English. We'll do a sampler, Ethan decided. Let her try everything, and 2 of whatever beer you're pushing tonight. Corona okay? Miguel asked Sabrina directly. Corona's fine. She found herself smiling, something she hadn't expected to do tonight. Thank you. As Miguel bustled away, calling orders to someone in the back, Sabrina looked around at the mismatched tables, the string lights, the neighborhood feel of the whole setup. This is perfect, she said quietly. Yeah? Ethan looked pleased. It's not fancy. I have fancy. Fancy doesn't usually come with... She gestured at the warmth, the genuine welcome, the lack of judgment. This. They fell into conversation as naturally as breathing. Ethan asked about her company, but not in the way most people did, not fishing for stock tips or trying to impress her with half-understood tech jargon. He asked about the actual work, the research, what drove her to focus on neural regeneration. And when she turned the questions back on him, he talked about his garage with the same passion she felt for her lab. It's not glamorous, he admitted. Oil changes, brake jobs, the occasional transmission rebuild, but there's something honest about it. Car comes in broken, I figure out why. I fix it, customer drives away happy. Simple. Simple sounds nice. It has its moments. He took a pull from his Corona. Though I'll admit, running a small business is harder than it looks, especially when you're doing it solo. You don't have partners? Had one. My best friend Danny. He passed about 2 years ago. Heart attack out of nowhere. After Sarah died, Danny basically kept me in the garage running while I figured out how to be a single dad. Now it's just me. Single dad? Sabrina felt something shift in her mental image of this man. Ethan's entire face transformed when he smiled. Lucy, she's 6. Smartest, funniest, most stubborn kid you'll ever meet. Got my stubbornness and her mom's brains, which is a dangerous combination. She sounds wonderful. She is. She's everything. He paused, something vulnerable entering his expression. After Sarah died, I didn't think I'd survive. Literally didn't know how to keep breathing. But Lucy needed me to figure it out, so I did. Kids have a way of making you braver than you are. Miguel arrived with plates that covered the entire table, tacos, quesadillas, fresh tortilla chips with guacamole and salsa, grilled corn dusted with cheese and chili powder. It smelled incredible. Eat, eat, Miguel commanded, before it gets cold. Sabrina reached for a taco, then paused. I should warn you, I'm about to ruin my professional image by eating with my hands like a normal person. Your secret's safe with me. The food was extraordinary. Not refined or delicate or artfully plated, but honest and flavorful and satisfying in a way the Delaney's tasting menu could never match. They ate and talked, and ate. And somewhere in the midst of it, Sabrina realized she was having more fun than she'd had in months. Then a server, a young woman who looked about 19, came by with fresh napkins. She was juggling several tasks at once, clearly overwhelmed by a busy night. As she reached across the table, her elbow caught the edge of a sauce container. Time seemed to slow as the container tipped, dark red salsa cascading directly onto Sabrina's shoe and lower leg. Oh my God, the server went pale. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Sabrina felt her entire body go rigid, not from the sauce, which was warm but harmless, but from what she knew was coming next. That moment when someone's eyes would drop to her legs, to the wheelchair, and the apology would shift from "I'm sorry I spilled" to "I'm sorry about everything." But Ethan was already moving. Without a word, without hesitation, he pulled a clean rag from his jacket pocket, the kind mechanics always seem to have, and crouched beside her wheelchair. His movements were practical, matter-of-fact, as he carefully wiped the salsa from her shoe, from her ankle, from the lower spoke of the wheel where some had splattered. There was no performance in it, no awkwardness, no pitying looks or careful glances at her face to gauge her reaction. He was simply solving a problem the same way he'd probably solved 10,000 problems in his garage, Identify the issue, apply the solution, move on. The server was still apologizing profusely, nearly in tears. Ethan looked up at her with a kind smile. Accidents happen. No harm done, right? Right, Sabrina managed, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. Really, it's fine. The server hurried away, clearly mortified, and Ethan finished cleaning up before standing and tucking the rag back in his pocket like nothing unusual had happened. Sorry about that, he said, settling back into his chair. Miguel really should have those containers weighted better. I've been telling him for months someone's going to knock one over. That was it. No making it about her disability. No treating her like she was fragile. No turning a minor accident into a referendum on her mobility. Just normalcy. Sabrina felt something crack open in her chest. Something that had been sealed tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Ethan? Her voice came out smaller than intended. Yeah? Thank you. Not just for this. For all of it. For earlier. For bringing me here. For... She struggled to find words for what she meant. For seeing me... He held her gaze across the table, those storm blue eyes serious and steady. Sabrina, anyone with eyes can see you. You're kind of hard to miss. That's not what I mean. I know what you mean. He said it gently. And you're welcome. They stayed at Miguel's for 2 hours, talking until the other tables had mostly emptied, and Miguel started giving them pointed looks about closing time. Ethan paid despite Sabrina's protests, leaving a tip that was probably larger than the entire bill. Outside, the October night had deepened into real cold. Sabrina pulled her jacket closer, and Ethan immediately shrugged out of his work jacket and draped it over her shoulders before she could object. I'm fine, she protested. So am I. But now you're warmer. The jacket smelled like motor oil and sawdust and something indefinably masculine. Sabrina found she didn't mind at all. I should call my car, she said, making no move to actually do so. You should, Ethan agreed, also not moving. They stood there on the sidewalk, the string lights casting soft shadows across their faces, the city humming around them in its endless rhythm. Sabrina felt the weight of the evening settling over her, the humiliation at the Delaney already feeling distant, like it had happened to someone else. What remained was this, standing in the cold with a man who'd shown her more genuine kindness in 3 hours than she'd experienced in 3 years. Can I see you again? The question came out before she could second-guess it. Ethan's smile started slow and spread into something that transformed his whole face. I'd really like that. Even though I'm a billionaire CEO and you're a mechanic and we probably have nothing in common except the city we live in. Especially because of that, he said. Besides, I think you sell us short. We both fix broken things for a living, just different kinds of broken. Sabrina felt herself smiling back, real and unguarded. Next week? There's a street fair in Union Square on Saturday. Lucy might like it? You want to meet Lucy? If that's okay. I haven't been to a street fair in years, and I have a feeling she'd be a good guide. Something in Ethan's expression went impossibly soft. She'd love that. Fair warning, though, she asks a lot of questions and has zero filter. I'll take my chances. Sabrina's car service arrived then, a sleek black Mercedes that looked absurdly out of place on this particular street corner. The driver got out to help, but Ethan was already there, steady and certain. I got it, he told the driver, who stepped back with professional neutrality. Ethan helped Sabrina into the car with the same care he'd shown all evening, respectful of her autonomy, attentive to her needs, never making assumptions. When she was settled, he handed her the work jacket she'd been wearing. Keep it, he said. I've got 3 more just like it. This is probably covered in grease stains. Probably, but it's warm, and now you have an excuse to see me again so you can return it. Sabrina laughed, surprising herself. I already have an excuse. Saturday at Union Square. Right. Good. That's good. He was grinning like an idiot, and somehow that made him even more attractive. The driver shut her door gently, and as the car pulled away from the curb, Sabrina turned to look back. Ethan stood under the string lights, one hand raised in farewell, looking nothing like the men she usually dated, and everything like someone she could maybe, possibly, terrifyingly trust. She pulled out her phone, pulled up his contact information. He'd given her his number while they ate, and sent a simple message. "Thank you for tonight. I haven't felt this human in a long time." His response came before she'd made it 3 blocks. "You don't have to thank me for treating you like a person. That should be the bare minimum, but you're welcome anyway. Can't wait for Saturday." Sabrina leaned her head back against the leather seat, Ethan's jacket warm across her lap, and allowed herself to feel something she'd banned from her emotional vocabulary for years. Hope. Real, fragile, terrifying hope. The kind that could break her worse than any boardroom battle or failed clinical trial or drunk driver ever had. But maybe, just maybe, the kind worth risking everything for. The car merged onto the highway, carrying her back toward her penthouse, her empire, her carefully constructed life. But for the first time in 6 years, Sabrina Vale wondered if that life was enough, or if somewhere between a disaster at the Delaney and tacos at Miguel's, she'd glimpsed something better, something real, something worth fighting for. Saturday arrived wrapped in the kind of autumn sunshine that made the city feel like a postcard of itself. Union Square had transformed into a kaleidoscope of vendor tents, food trucks, and temporary stages where musicians competed for attention. The air smelled like kettle corn, grilled sausages, and the particular electric energy that came from thousands of people gathered in one place for no reason except joy. Sabrina arrived early, which she told herself had nothing to do with nervousness and everything to do with her usual punctuality. She'd changed outfits 4 times that morning, finally settling on dark jeans, a cashmere sweater the color of autumn leaves, and a leather jacket that managed to look effortlessly expensive without screaming her net worth. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she'd kept her makeup minimal. This was supposed to be casual, normal, the kind of thing regular people did on Saturday afternoons. Except Sabrina couldn't remember the last time she'd done anything that qualified as normal. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Running 5 minutes late. Lucy needed to change her outfit 3 times. Apparently the first 2 shirts were not adventure shirts. Sabrina smiled, typing back quickly. Sabrina. Take your time. I'll be by the fountain. She positioned herself near the edge of the square where she had a clear view of the approaching sidewalks. Around her, the fair pulsed with life. Children chasing each other between vendor stalls, couples walking hand in hand, elderly people settled on benches with coffee and newspapers. Sabrina watched it all with the strange detachment of someone who'd spent so long in boardrooms and laboratories that she'd forgotten what spontaneous human gathering looked like. "Is that her? Dad, is that her?" The voice carried across the square, high, excited, utterly without restraint. Sabrina turned to see Ethan approaching with a small girl practically vibrating with energy at his side. Lucy Cole was exactly as advertised, wild brown curls escaping from a lopsided ponytail, missing front teeth visible in her enormous grin, wearing what was apparently an adventure shirt, a purple t-shirt with a dinosaur riding a skateboard. "Lucy, inside voice," Ethan said, but he was smiling. He looked different in the daylight, less like the knight who'd rescued her from the Delaney and more like a regular dad in jeans and a flannel shirt, though Sabrina noticed he'd made an effort. The shirt looked new, his boots were cleaner than the ones he'd worn to Miguel's, and his hair was neatly combed. Lucy had no such reservations about subtlety. She ran the last few feet and stopped directly in front of Sabrina's wheelchair, her dark eyes, Ethan's eyes, wide with unfiltered curiosity. "Hi, I'm Lucy. You're Sabrina. Dad said you're really smart and you build robot parts for people." "Lucy," Ethan started, his expression somewhere between amused and mortified. "It's okay," Sabrina said, smiling at the girl. "Hi, Lucy. Your dad's mostly right. I work on technology that helps people who are injured. Not quite robot parts, but close." "That's so cool." Lucy bounced on her toes. "Can you make rocket boots? Because I really want rocket boots." "I'll add it to my research list," Sabrina said seriously, "right after neural regeneration and advanced prosthetics." "What's neural regener, that word?" "It means helping people's nerves heal when they're hurt. Like if someone can't walk because their spine is injured, we try to fix it so they can walk again." Lucy's face scrunched up in concentration. "Like you?" "Lucy!" Ethan's voice was sharper now. "We talked about this." "What did I say?" That it's okay to ask questions, but I gotta be respectful, Lucy recited dutifully, then looked back at Sabrina with genuine concern. Was that not respectful? I'm sorry, Dad says I talk before my brain catches up sometimes. Sabrina felt her chest tighten with unexpected warmth. You didn't do anything wrong. Yes, like me. I was in an accident and now I use a wheelchair. The research I do is partly because I want to help other people who go through the same thing. Oh. Lucy processed this with the serious consideration only children could manage. That makes sense. If I couldn't walk, I'd want someone smart to help me too. Then, without missing a beat, do you want to see the face painting? They have butterflies and tigers, and last year they did a dragon that looked so real. Just like that, the moment passed. No pity, no awkwardness, just acceptance, and an immediate pivot to what actually mattered, face painting. Ethan met Sabrina's eyes over his daughter's head, his expression apologetic and proud in equal measure. Told you, no filter. I like it, Sabrina said honestly. Most people dance around it for hours before asking what they really want to know. Well, if you've got any other questions, Luce will definitely ask them. They started into the fair proper, Lucy skipping ahead before circling back like an enthusiastic puppy, pointing out every vendor and attraction with running commentary. Ethan walked beside Sabrina, close enough that their shoulders occasionally brushed, adjusting his pace without making it obvious. The fair was more accessible than Sabrina had expected. Vendor aisles wide enough for easy navigation, ramps at the curbs, and a general atmosphere of inclusion that made her relax incrementally. She'd been to too many public events where her wheelchair became an obstacle course, where she had to plan every movement like a military operation. This felt different, easier. So, Ethan said as Lucy darted ahead to examine a booth selling handmade kaleidoscopes. How was your week? Any corporate takeovers? Hostile board meetings? Just the usual chaos. We're finalizing Phase 2 trial protocols for our new spinal interface system. The FDA is being predictably difficult. Spinal interface. That's the thing you mentioned? The neural regeneration? Sabrina glanced at him, surprised. You remembered that? I remember most things you tell me, Ethan said simply. It's interesting. You're interesting. Heat crept up Sabrina's neck. She wasn't used to men paying attention to her work except as a status symbol or investment opportunity. What about you? How's the garage? Busy. Had a '67 Mustang come in that needed a complete engine rebuild. Beautiful car, but the owner had let some hack mechanic tear into it first. Spent 3 days just undoing damage before I could start the actual repair. That sounds frustrating? Nah. I like the puzzles. Every car tells a story, how it's been treated, what it's been through, what it needs to run right again. There's something honest about that kind of work. Lucy reappeared suddenly, tugging on Ethan's sleeve. Dad, they have the good lemonade, the pink kind. Can I get some, please? What's the magic word? Please? Lucy drew it out into multiple syllables. I'll share with Sabrina. You don't have to eat, Sabrina started. I want to. Lucy was already bouncing again. Sharing is caring. That's what Miss Martinez says. Ethan pulled out his wallet. All right, 1 pink lemonade, and you share like you promised. Lucy grabbed the bills and took off toward the lemonade stand with the kind of fearless speed that made Sabrina's heart clench with vicarious parental anxiety. But Ethan just watched her with the calm of someone who'd learned to trust his kid's independence. She's amazing, Sabrina said. She's a handful. But his voice was full of pride. After Sarah died, I worried I'd screw her up. That she'd be traumatized or angry or I don't know. But kids are resilient in ways adults aren't. She misses her mom every day, but she still wakes up excited about dinosaurs and pink lemonade and adventure shirts. You're doing a good job with her. Ethan's smile was crooked, almost shy. I'm trying. That's about all I can claim. Most days I'm just making it up as I go. Lucy returned triumphant with a large cup of violently pink lemonade, 2 straws, and a determined expression. She positioned herself between Sabrina and Ethan, holding the cup so everyone could reach. See? Sharing, she announced proudly. They wandered through the fair like that, 3 people who had no business being together, who came from completely different worlds, yet somehow fit. Lucy provided endless commentary, asking vendors about their crafts, demanding Ethan lift her up to see over crowds, and periodically checking to make sure Sabrina was keeping up. At a jewelry booth, Lucy spent 15 minutes debating between a bracelet with tiny bells and one with blue beads before Ethan quietly bought both and let her think she'd chosen. At the face painting station, she insisted on a butterfly that covered half her face, then spent 10 minutes examining her reflection in a hand mirror while making increasingly elaborate flight motions. Sabrina found herself laughing more than she had in months. Real laughter, the kind that came from genuine joy rather than polite obligation. When Lucy accidentally spilled some of her lemonade on Ethan's boots and looked terrified of his reaction, he just shrugged and said, "Good thing they were already broken in." When they passed a booth selling beautiful hand-woven scarves, Ethan paused, studying them with unexpected focus. "Sarah loved these," he said quietly, running his fingers over the fabric. "She had a whole collection, different colors for different moods. She used to say they were her armor for bad days." "Do you still have them?" Sabrina asked gently. "Yeah, boxed up in the closet. I couldn't get rid of them, but Lucy's too young for them now. Maybe when she's older." He pulled his hand back. "Sorry, didn't mean to bring the mood down." "You didn't. Your wife is part of who you are. I don't expect you to edit that." Ethan looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, something that made her heart beat faster. "Dad! Sabrina! They're doing music over there. Can we go?" Lucy was already pulling them toward a small stage where a band was setting up. The music started minutes later, folk rock with a fiddle player who attacked his instrument with joyous violence. The crowd naturally formed a dancing space in front of the stage, and Lucy immediately joined the throng of children spinning and jumping with complete disregard for rhythm or coordination. Ethan and Sabrina found a spot at the edge, Sabrina's wheelchair giving them a natural bubble of space. They watched Lucy dance with the unself-conscious abandon of childhood, her butterfly face paint catching the afternoon light. "She's got her mother's terrible rhythm," Ethan said, but he was grinning. "Sarah couldn't dance either, used to step on my feet constantly." "You dance?" "I can hold my own." He glanced at her sideways. "You?" "Not since the accident." Sabrina tried to keep her voice neutral. "There are adaptive techniques, but I don't know." It felt like admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. Ethan was quiet for a moment, watching his daughter spin in dizzying circles. Then he stood and moved to face Sabrina directly. "Dance with me," he said. "Ethan, I can't." "Yes, you can. Different doesn't mean can't." He extended his hand. "Trust me?" Sabrina looked at his calloused palm, at his open expression, at the absolute certainty in his eyes that this wasn't pity or charity, but a genuine invitation. Around them, people were watching, some curious, some already filming on phones, but for once, Sabrina didn't care. She took his hand. Ethan moved behind her wheelchair, his hands gentle on the handles. "Let me know if I'm doing this wrong," he said, and then he started to move. It wasn't conventional dancing, it was something else entirely. Ethan guided her chair in slow circles, in gentle arcs, matching the rhythm of the music while giving her full control. Sabrina gripped the wheels, adding her own movement, spinning and gliding in a way she'd never attempted before. Together, they found a rhythm. His strength, her precision, both of them learning the language of this new kind of movement. The fiddle soared, the crowd clapped. Lucy stopped her own dancing to watch, her eyes huge with delight. And for 3 minutes and 47 seconds, Sabrina Vale danced. When the song ended, she was breathing hard, her face flushed, her heart pounding with something that felt dangerously close to happiness. Ethan came back around to face her, slightly out of breath himself, grinning like they'd just pulled off something magnificent. "See?" he said. "You can dance." Sabrina couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Instead, she reached up and pulled him down into a hug, awkward given the height difference and the wheelchair between them, but real and fierce and full of gratitude she couldn't articulate. Lucy crashed into both of them, creating a 3-person tangle of arms and laughter. "That was so cool," she shrieked. "You guys looked like professionals, like on TV." They stayed at the fair until the sun started dropping toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lucy's energy finally began to flag, her butterfly face paint smudged, her adventure shirt decorated with various food stains, her questions finally slowing to a manageable pace. "I think someone's ready for dinner in bed," Ethan said, scooping his daughter up. She didn't even protest, just leaned her head against his shoulder with the boneless exhaustion of childhood fully spent. "Today was awesome," Lucy mumbled. "Sabrina's awesome. Can she come to dinner?" Sabrina and Ethan's eyes met over Lucy's head. "I don't want to intrude on your evening," Sabrina started. "You wouldn't be intruding," Ethan said quickly. "I mean, it won't be fancy, probably just pasta and whatever vegetables I can trick Lucy into eating. But you'd be welcome, really welcome." The smart thing would be to decline, to maintain boundaries, to go home to her penthouse and her carefully controlled life, and remember that this, whatever this was, existed in a separate sphere from her real world. But Sabrina was tired of being smart. "I'd love to come to dinner." Ethan's apartment was a third-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better decades. The elevator was broken. A handwritten sign proclaimed it had been broken for 3 weeks, which meant Ethan had to carry Lucy up while Sabrina waited below, already planning her apology for making him do additional trips. But Ethan reappeared almost immediately. Lucy deposited safely upstairs. "Okay," he said, studying the staircase with the same analytical focus he probably gave broken engines. "This is definitely not ADA compliant. I can carry you up, or we can order delivery and eat down here, or—" "You can carry me up," Sabrina said before she could overthink it. "If that's okay." "More than okay. Just tell me if I'm doing anything wrong." He lifted her from the wheelchair with surprising ease, one arm under her knees, the other supporting her back, the kind of practiced motion that spoke of having carried his late wife, his daughter, his entire life of taking care of people. Sabrina wrapped her arms around his neck, acutely aware of how close they were, how she could feel his heartbeat against her side, how he smelled like clean soap and autumn air. "You're stronger than you look," she said as he started up the stairs. "Mechanic arms. We're basically functional gorillas." She laughed against his shoulder. "Is that your professional assessment?" "Completely professional. Backed by years of oil changes and tire rotations." A neighbor passed them on the second-floor landing, an elderly woman who looked entirely unsurprised by the sight of Ethan carrying someone upstairs. "Evening, Mrs. Chen," Ethan said pleasantly. "Evening, Ethan. That your lady friend Lucy mentioned?" "This is Sabrina. Sabrina, Mrs. Chen. She makes the best dumplings in 6 states and doesn't let me forget it." "7 states," Mrs. Chen corrected. "I perfected my New Jersey recipe last month." She studied Sabrina with sharp eyes. "You treat him right. He's a good man." "I can see that," Sabrina said honestly. Mrs. Chen nodded, satisfied, and continued down the stairs. Ethan's apartment was small but clean, decorated in the haphazard style of someone who'd furnished it from necessity rather than design. A worn couch faced a modest TV. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Toys were scattered across the living room floor in a pattern that suggested recent chaos. The kitchen was tiny, barely room for one person, let alone 2. But everything was organized with the same precision Sabrina imagined Ethan brought to his garage. Lucy was sprawled on the couch, already half asleep despite her protests. "No falling asleep before dinner," Ethan announced, setting Sabrina gently on the couch beside his daughter while he went back down for the wheelchair. "I know your tricks." By the time he returned, barely out of breath, carrying her chair like it weighed nothing, Lucy had indeed fallen asleep, curled up with her head on Sabrina's lap. "Well?" Ethan said, looking at his unconscious daughter with fond resignation. "So much for her eating vegetables. She had a big day." "She had a great day." Ethan moved to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator. "I should probably carry her to bed, but she'll wake up starving at midnight if I do. Parenting is just choosing which problem to deal with later." Sabrina found herself gently stroking Lucy's hair, the curls soft under her fingers. The girl made a small, contented sound in her sleep, burrowing closer. "She likes you," Ethan observed from the kitchen doorway. "She's not usually this comfortable with new people." "I like her too. She's honest. I spend most of my time with people who say what they think I want to hear. Lucy just says what's true." "Yeah, that's a blessing and a curse." Ethan started pulling ingredients from cabinets. "Fair warning, I'm not a fancy cook. Sarah was the chef." I mostly specialize in things that can't be screwed up too badly. I live on takeout and protein shakes. Your bar is low. They fell into an easy rhythm, Ethan cooking while maintaining a running commentary about his technique or lack thereof. Sabrina providing occasional suggestions while keeping Lucy's sleeping form comfortable. The domesticity of it struck Sabrina as both foreign and deeply appealing. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been in someone's actual home like this, watching dinner being made, feeling like part of something normal and real. "So I have to ask," Ethan said as he stirred pasta. "What's a biotech CEO doing spending her Saturday at a street fair with a mechanic and a 6-year-old? Don't you have yacht parties or charity galas or whatever billionaires do on weekends?" "Those exist. I avoid them when possible." Sabrina adjusted Lucy's position slightly. "Most of my social obligations are professional. Networking events disguised as parties. Everyone wants something: investment, connections, partnerships. It gets exhausting, being a walking business opportunity." "Is that what happened with that guy? At the restaurant?" Sabrina had known the question would come eventually. "Marcus? No, he wasn't after business connections. He was just looking for something specific, and I didn't match the specifications." Ethan's jaw tightened. His specifications were shit. Maybe, but he's not wrong that I should have told him up front. Most dating apps have ways to indicate disability. I chose not to use them because I wanted— She paused, searching for honesty. "I wanted someone to know me first, to see me as Sabrina before they saw the wheelchair, which was probably naive." "Not naive, human." Ethan drained the pasta, the steam rising around him. "Everyone wants to be seen for who they are, not what's most obvious about them. That's not naive. That's just wanting basic decency. Decency seems to be in short supply these days." "Yeah, well, the world's full of assholes. Doesn't mean you should lower your standards." He plated the food, simple pasta with marinara, garlic bread, a salad that looked surprisingly competent, and brought it to the small dining table. Then he gently lifted Lucy from Sabrina's lap. "Come on, Munchkin. Bedtime for real now." Lucy stirred, mumbling protests, but Ethan had clearly done this dance before. Within minutes, he'd gotten her into pajamas, brushed her teeth, and tucked her into bed in the small bedroom Sabrina could glimpse through a doorway. She could hear him reading a story in a soft voice, hear Lucy's drowsy responses, hear the quiet intimacy of a father putting his daughter to sleep. When he returned, his expression was soft, with the particular tenderness that came from loving a child. "Sorry about that. She fights sleep like it's her mortal enemy, then crashes completely." "Don't apologize. It's sweet." They ate dinner at the small table, knees occasionally bumping underneath, conversation flowing as easily as it had at Miguel's. Ethan asked about her research with genuine curiosity, following up on details, asking questions that showed he'd actually listened. Sabrina found herself explaining complex neural pathways and bioelectric interfaces with an enthusiasm she usually reserved for scientific conferences. "So, basically," Ethan said, working through it, "you're trying to rebuild the communication highway between the brain and the body?" "That's a very simplified version, but yes, the spinal cord is like a bundle of cables carrying signals. When it's damaged, those signals can't get through. We're developing technology that can bridge the gap, read the brain's intentions, and translate them into movement." "And it works?" "In early trials, yes. We've had patients with complete paralysis regain some voluntary movement. It's not perfect, not like science fiction where they just walk out of the lab, but it's progress." Her voice quieted. "For some people, even a little progress means everything." Ethan reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You're doing important work, literally changing lives." "Trying to." Sabrina looked at their joined hands. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing it for the right reasons. Is it genuine altruism, or am I just trying to fix myself through other people?" "Does it matter? If the outcome is the same, if people get their lives back, does the motivation change the value?" "I don't know. Probably not, but it feels dishonest somehow." "Sabrina," Ethan waited until she met his eyes. "You could have done anything with your intelligence and your resources. You chose to help people. That counts, regardless of your motivation." They finished dinner in comfortable silence, then migrated to the couch with wine that Ethan admitted was probably terrible. "I know nothing about wine except that the bottle had a pretty label. But that tasted fine to Sabrina, who'd spent enough time at charity galas drinking expensive vineyards to appreciate simple honesty. Tell me about Sarah, Sabrina said softly. If you want to. Ethan took a long sip of wine, his expression distant but not pained. She was a teacher, 3rd grade, loved kids, loved books, loved terrible puns. We met at a mutual friend's wedding. She caught the bouquet, I caught the garter, and tradition dictated we had to dance together. She stepped on my feet 7 times during one song. Love at first dance? Love at first conversation. After the wedding, we ended up at the hotel bar just talking until sunrise. She was smart and funny and completely herself. No pretense, no games. What you saw was what you got. He smiled at the memory. We were married 8 months later. Lucy came a year after that. We had 6 good years before the cancer. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but Sabrina meant them. Yeah, me too. Ethan turned the wine glass in his hands. The thing about cancer is it gives you time to say goodbye, which is both a blessing and a curse. We had 8 months from diagnosis to the end. 8 months of watching her get smaller, weaker, fighting a battle we both knew she'd lose. She made me promise not to stop living after she was gone. Made me promise Lucy would grow up happy. It sounds like you're keeping that promise. I'm trying. Some days are easier than others. He looked at her directly. After she died, I didn't think I'd ever want to date again. Couldn't imagine letting anyone else into that space she'd occupied. But then I saw you at that restaurant, and something just shifted. Sabrina's heart was beating too fast. Shifted how? I recognized something in you. That look of someone who'd survived something terrible and came out stronger, but also more careful. Someone who knew what it cost to be vulnerable. He set down his wine glass. I knew I wanted to know you. Not just know about you, but actually know you. You barely know anything about me, Sabrina protested weakly. I know you're brilliant and driven and kind to 6-year-olds who ask too many questions. I know you dance like nobody's watching, even when everyone is. I know you're brave enough to keep trying for connection, even after people keep disappointing you. His voice dropped lower. I know that when you smile for real, not your polite CEO smile, but your actual smile, it changes your whole face. And I know I want to see that smile as often as possible. Sabrina couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except feel the weight of his words settling over her like something precious and fragile. Ethan, She didn't know how to finish that sentence. This is complicated. My life is complicated. The company, my father, the public attention. I'm a widowed mechanic with a 6-year-old daughter and a garage that barely breaks even. My life is complicated too. He shifted closer on the couch, but complicated doesn't mean impossible. People will judge you for dating me, she gestured at her wheelchair, for all of it. Let them judge. I stopped caring what other people think the day I had to bury my wife. My father will make it difficult. He has very specific ideas about who I should be with, and you don't fit the profile. I'm not interested in dating your father. I'm interested in dating you. Sabrina felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. Why? Why would you want to take this on? You could find someone easier, someone without... Stop. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. You're not a burden to be taken on. You're a person I genuinely like and want to spend time with. The wheelchair is part of your life, sure, but it's not what defines you. Not to me. You say that now? I say that now, and I'll say it tomorrow and the day after that. He took her hand again, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Sabrina, I've been through enough loss to know when something matters. You matter. This matters. Whatever this is between us, it's worth exploring. She looked at him, really looked at him. At the sincerity in his storm blue eyes, at the strength in his weathered hands, at the quiet certainty that seemed to radiate from him like heat. He wasn't offering her rescue or charity or pity. He was offering partnership, respect, genuine connection. He was offering everything she'd convinced herself she couldn't have. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. His smile was crooked. But I think the best things are usually scary. Sabrina leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It was nothing like the dramatic kiss she'd imagined during weak moments in her penthouse. It was better, soft and questioning and real. Ethan's hand came up to cup her face, his touch reverent, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling. "I should go," Sabrina said, not moving. "You should," Ethan agreed, also not moving. They kissed again, longer this time, and Sabrina felt years of careful self-protection crumbling under the gentle assault of his attention. When they finally separated, really separated, it was nearly midnight. Ethan insisted on calling her a car service, on carrying her back down the stairs, on waiting with her until the Mercedes arrived. On the sidewalk, lit by street lamps and the warm glow from apartment windows above, they stood close together. "Same time next week?" Ethan asked. "Lucy's already planning our next adventure, something about a children's museum and the world's largest dinosaur exhibit." "I'd love that." Sabrina hesitated. "Would you want to come to something of mine? There's a fundraising gala next Friday. It's going to be boring and pretentious and full of people who talk too much about money, but I'd be honored," Ethan interrupted. "Fair warning, though, I don't own a tux." "You don't need a tux, just be yourself." "That I can manage." The car arrived, and once again Ethan helped her inside with patient care. Before he closed the door, he leaned in. "Thank you for today," he said, "for spending it with us, for being patient with Lucy's chaos, for—" he paused, "for taking a chance on a mechanic with grease under his fingernails." "Thank you for seeing me," Sabrina replied softly. "All of me." As the car pulled away, Sabrina watched him through the rear window. A single father in a flannel shirt, standing under a street lamp in a neighborhood far from her world, waving goodbye like she was something precious. And for the first time in 6 years, Sabrina allowed herself to believe that maybe she was. That maybe broken things could find each other and create something whole. That maybe love wasn't about fixing what was damaged, but accepting it, honoring it, building around it. The city lights blurred past the windows as her phone buzzed. "Ethan, Lucy just woke up asking if that was a dream. I told her it was real. She said good, and went back to sleep." "I agree with her assessment." Sabrina smiled, typing back with shaking hands. "Sabrina, it was real. All of it was real." Ethan, "Can't wait to see you Friday, though I might need coaching on how to survive a fundraising gala." Sabrina, "Just stay close to me. We'll survive it together." Ethan, "Deal." "Sweet dreams, Sabrina." Sabrina, "Sweet dreams, Ethan." She leaned back against the leather seat, Ethan's words echoing in her mind, and let herself feel the full weight of what was beginning. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely unpredictable. It was everything the carefully controlled life she'd built wasn't. It was Hope wearing work boots and carrying a 6-year-old girl with butterfly face paint and dinosaur shirts. And it was the most real thing she'd felt in years. The weeks that followed felt like living in 2 different worlds simultaneously. During business hours, Sabrina was still the formidable CEO of Valcor Biotech, commanding boardrooms, negotiating with the FDA, driving her research team toward breakthrough after breakthrough. But the moment she left the glass tower that housed her empire, she stepped into something softer, warmer, more real than anything her corporate life could offer. She saw Ethan 3 times that first week, once for coffee on Tuesday morning before work, where he showed up with grease still under his fingernails and apologized for smelling like motor oil. Once for a late dinner on Thursday at a Thai restaurant, where they argued good-naturedly about whether science or hands-on experience taught you more about problem-solving. And once on Saturday, when Lucy insisted on teaching Sabrina how to make friendship bracelets with an intensity usually reserved for nuclear physics. The fundraising gala arrived faster than Sabrina wanted. She'd attended hundreds of these events, charity auctions where the wealthy displayed their generosity like expensive jewelry, where every conversation was a chess match, where she was always on guard against people who wanted something from her. But this time felt different because Ethan would be there, and she had no idea how her 2 worlds would collide. She'd sent a car for him, which he'd initially refused until she explained that arriving separately would cause more speculation than arriving together. When the Mercedes pulled up to her building at 7 o'clock, Sabrina was waiting in the lobby, her heart performing complicated acrobatics against her ribs. Ethan stepped out wearing a suit that fit him surprisingly well, charcoal gray, clearly not custom but respectable, paired with a dark blue tie that brought out his eyes. He'd shaved, trimmed his hair, and looked simultaneously comfortable and completely out of his element. "You clean up nice," Sabrina said as he approached. "I feel like I'm wearing a costume." He tugged at his collar. "Last time I wore this suit was Sarah's funeral. Probably should have led with something less depressing." "You look perfect." And he did. Not polished like the men she usually encountered at these events, but real and solid and unmistakably himself. Ready to be bored to death by people talking about their stock portfolios? "Ready to spend the evening with you," he corrected. "The boring rich people are just scenery." The gala was held at the Grandview Museum, a marble palace overlooking the river where centuries-old art competed with century-old money for attention. The main hall had been transformed into a glittering ballroom, crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, champagne fountains, and enough designer gowns to fund a small country's GDP. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable, while servers in crisp uniforms circulated with trays of canapes that cost more per bite than most people's lunches. Sabrina felt Ethan tense beside her as they entered, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that was both protective and seeking protection. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "Yeah, just remember, I work on cars for a living. This isn't exactly my natural habitat." "It's not mine either," Sabrina admitted. "I just fake it better." They'd barely made it 10 feet into the room before the circling began. Marcus Winters, a venture capitalist she'd rejected 3 times. Catherine Joe, a rival biotech CEO always fishing for insider information. David Brennan, whose pharmaceutical company wanted to acquire Veilcor's patents. They descended like well-dressed vultures, all polite smiles and calculated interest. "Sabrina, darling, you look stunning," Catherine air-kissed near Sabrina's cheeks, her eyes already cataloging Ethan with predatory assessment. "And who is this?" "Ethan Cole," Sabrina said smoothly. "Ethan, this is Catherine Joe. She runs Neurodyne. Your competitor," Ethan said, shaking Catherine's hand with exactly the right amount of pressure. Polite but not deferential. Catherine's smile sharpened. "Friendly competitor. We're all working toward the same goals, really. And what do you do, Ethan?" "I'm a mechanic, run an auto repair shop downtown." The silence that followed lasted approximately 2 seconds, but felt like an eternity. Catherine's expression flickered through surprise, confusion, and barely concealed condescension before settling on brittle politeness. "How refreshingly blue-collar," she managed. "I'm sure that's very fulfilling work." "It is," Ethan said evenly, either missing or deliberately ignoring her tone. "Nothing better than fixing something broken and watching it run smooth again. I imagine you feel the same about your research." Catherine blinked, clearly unsure whether she'd been insulted or complimented. Before she could respond, Marcus Winters inserted himself into the conversation with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. "Sabrina, we need to talk about the Henderson merger. My office, Monday?" "My assistant will check my schedule," Sabrina said, which was polite corporate speak for absolutely not. "Make it happen. This is time sensitive." Marcus barely glanced at Ethan, dismissing him as irrelevant. "We can discuss it over dinner if you're free next week." "I'm not," Sabrina said firmly. "Then make yourself free. This is important." Ethan's hand tightened slightly on Sabrina's back. When he spoke, his voice was pleasant, but contained an edge she recognized from the night at the Delaney. "The lady said she's not free. Pretty clear communication, seems to me." Marcus finally looked at Ethan properly, his expression moving through the same journey Catherine's had. Assessment, dismissal, irritation. "And you are?" "Someone who understands what no means." The tension crystallized into something sharp and uncomfortable. Sabrina intervened before it could escalate. "Marcus, if you want to discuss business, email my office. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have people to see." She navigated them away from the cluster of corporate predators, Ethan following her lead through the crowd. When they reached a relatively quiet corner near one of the ice sculptures, he let out a long breath. "Jesus. Are they all like that?" "Most of them, yes. Welcome to my world." "Your world is exhausting." He accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server, studied it with suspicion. "This tastes expensive and terrible. How much did they pay for this?" "Probably $300 a bottle." Ethan nearly choked. "$300 for this?" I could get better champagne for $40 at the liquor store on 5th. But then how would everyone know you're wealthy enough not to care about wasting money? Point taken. He set the glass down on a nearby table with finality. So what's the actual purpose of this thing, besides showing off expensive bad champagne? Officially, raising money for pediatric cancer research. Unofficially, networking, deal-making, and social positioning. And you have to come to these? It's expected, part of the role. Sabrina watched the crowd swirl around them like schools of beautifully dressed fish. If I don't show up, people speculate that the company's in trouble, or I'm sick, or I've lost my edge. So I come, I smile, I write a large check, and I leave as soon as socially acceptable. How large a check are we talking? Tonight? Probably $500,000. Ethan stared at her. $500,000 for one night. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you could fund my garage for 10 years with what you're donating to one event. He said it without judgment, just stating facts. Your life is so far outside my reference points that I can't even process it properly. Sabrina felt something cold settle in her chest. Does that bother you? Bother me? No. Intimidate me? Yeah, a little. He looked at her directly. But I knew who you were before I asked you out. Knew the money, the power, the whole package. I'm here anyway. Why? Because you're you. The rest is just details. Before Sabrina could respond, a new voice cut through the ambient noise of the gala. Sabrina, there you are. Graham Vale approached like a king surveying his territory. Tall, silver-haired, expensively tailored, radiating the kind of authority that came from generations of inherited wealth and cultivated power. At 68, he looked younger, moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in any meaningful way, and carried himself like every room existed for his benefit. Sabrina's spine went rigid. Father, I didn't know you were coming. Last-minute decision. The foundation board requested my presence. His eyes moved to Ethan with the calculating assessment of someone evaluating livestock. And who might this be? Ethan Cole, Sabrina said, her voice carefully neutral. Ethan, this is my father, Graham Vale. Ethan extended his hand. Graham looked at it for a long moment before accepting the handshake with the minimum pressure required by politeness. Cole, Graham repeated as if testing the name for defects. I don't believe we've met in any professional capacity. No, sir. I run an auto repair shop. Not much overlap with biotech. An auto repair shop. Graham's tone could have frozen the champagne. How quaint. And how exactly did you meet my daughter? The question hung in the air like a trap. Sabrina opened her mouth to intervene, but Ethan spoke first. I helped her out of a bad situation. We got to talking. Turns out we enjoy each other's company. A bad situation, Graham echoed. How dramatic. And this company you enjoy, is it leading somewhere, or is this merely a diversion for both of you? Father, Sabrina's voice carried a warning. I'm simply asking a reasonable question. You're a public figure, Sabrina, the CEO of a major corporation. Your associations reflect on ValeCorp, on our family legacy. Surely you understand that your choices have consequences beyond your personal preferences. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. With respect, sir, who Sabrina spends time with is her choice to make, not yours. The temperature around them dropped several degrees. Graham's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Young man, you clearly don't understand the complexities of Sabrina's position. She has responsibilities to her company, to her shareholders, to the family name. These responsibilities require certain standards of association. And I don't meet those standards? Ethan's voice had gone very quiet. Because I work with my hands instead of pushing papers? Because I didn't inherit my success? Because you come from completely different worlds, Graham said bluntly. Worlds that don't mix well. I'm sure you're a perfectly adequate mechanic, Mr. Cole, but my daughter requires someone who understands her life, her pressures, her obligations, someone of similar background and education, someone appropriate. The word appropriate landed like a slap. Sabrina felt rage building in her chest, hot and familiar. That's enough, she said coldly. Ethan is my guest, and you're being incredibly rude. I'm being realistic, Graham corrected. something you seem to have forgotten in your apparent infatuation with playing at normalcy. This is not a fairy tale, Sabrina. You can't simply run off with the first working-class man who shows you basic kindness and expect it to end well. You don't know anything about him. I know enough. I know he can't possibly provide the kind of life you're accustomed to. I know he'll eventually become intimidated by your success or resentful of your wealth. I know that this little dalliance will end badly, and when it does, you'll have damaged your reputation for nothing. Ethan's hand had dropped from Sabrina's back. When she glanced at him, his expression was carefully blank, but she could see the impact of her father's words in the tension of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. "We should go," Ethan said quietly. "No," Sabrina said firmly. "We're not letting him chase us out." "Sabrina, I'm not chasing anyone. I'm protecting you from making a mistake." Graham's tone shifted slightly, becoming almost paternal. "You've worked so hard to build Veilcore, to establish yourself in this industry. Don't throw it away on some misguided rebellion against the expectations of your position." "This isn't rebellion," Sabrina said, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "This is me choosing to have a life outside the company, to be something more than just a CEO or a Veil or your daughter. Why is that so threatening to you?" "It's not threatening. It's ill-advised." Graham glanced around, lowering his voice. "People are watching, Sabrina. They're already talking about you showing up with a mechanic. Do you have any idea how that looks?" "I don't care how it looks." "Then you're being foolish. Perception matters in our world. Image matters. And right now you're creating an image that suggests poor judgment and questionable priorities." Ethan stepped forward, his voice still controlled but carrying steel underneath. "Mr. Vale, I think I understand what you're trying to say. You don't think I'm good enough for your daughter. You think I'm going to hurt her or drag her down or embarrass her somehow. And you might be right about some of that. We are from different worlds, and yeah, sometimes I feel completely out of my depth around her success. But here's what you're missing." He paused, making sure Graham was listening. "I see her, not her company, not her bank account, not the Vale family legacy. I see Sabrina, the woman who dances in street fairs and makes friendship bracelets with 6-year-olds and lights up when she talks about her research. The woman who's brave and brilliant and kind. That's who I care about. And if you can't see past the corporate image to recognize that she deserves to be valued for who she actually is, then respectfully, you're the one with the problem, not me." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone within earshot had stopped pretending to have their own conversations and was openly watching the confrontation. Sabrina saw phones being discreetly positioned for photos, saw the gossip already spreading through the room in whispers and knowing looks. Graham's expression had gone to stone. "You're right about one thing, Mr. Cole. You are out of your depth, way out. And this conversation demonstrates exactly why you're unsuitable for my daughter." He turned to Sabrina. "When you're ready to think clearly about this situation, we'll talk. Until then, enjoy your evening." He walked away with the measured pace of someone who'd won the argument and knew it. The crowd parted for him automatically, then immediately closed in on his wake like water filling a void. Sabrina couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too bright, too full of watching eyes and judgment. She could already imagine tomorrow's gossip columns. Veilcore CEO's mystery mechanic boyfriend confronts billionaire father at charity gala. Her board would have questions. Her investors would have concerns. Her carefully maintained professional image would take a hit that could take months to repair. But more than any of that, she could see the impact on Ethan's face. The way he'd closed himself off, the walls coming up behind his eyes. "I need air," she said. They made their way through the crowd to one of the museum's side terraces, Sabrina navigating the curious stairs with her chin up and her expression locked down tight. The terrace was mercifully empty, overlooking the river where city lights reflected on dark water. The November air was cold enough to bite, but Sabrina welcomed it. "I'm sorry," she said once they were alone. "I'm so sorry. He had no right to speak to you that way." "He's not wrong, though." Ethan's voice was flat, distant. "About us being from different worlds, about the perception issues, about me being out of my depth." "Don't do that. Don't let him get in your head. He's already in my head, Sabrina. Has been since the moment he looked at me like I was something stuck to his shoe." Ethan turned to face her, and the pain in his expression made her chest ache. "I knew this would be hard. knew people would judge. But hearing it spelled out like that, hearing exactly how inadequate I am, according to your world's standards, that's different from abstractly knowing it might be an issue. You're not inadequate. I make $40,000 a year on a good year, Ethan interrupted. I live in a third-floor walk-up with broken elevators. I own 3 suits total, and 2 of them don't fit anymore. My idea of a nice dinner is Miguel's food stall. Your father is right that I can't provide the kind of life you're used to. I don't care about, but I care. His voice cracked slightly. I care that I can't take you to places like this without feeling like an imposter. I care that people look at us and see a mismatch. I care that your father thinks I'm going to damage your reputation just by existing next to you. Sabrina felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. Ethan, please, don't let him do this. Don't let him make you doubt what we have. What do we have, Sabrina? Really? He wasn't being cruel, just honest. We've known each other a few weeks. We've been on a handful of dates. We have amazing chemistry, and we make each other laugh, and I think about you constantly. But is that enough? Is that enough to bridge the gap between your $3 billion empire and my garage that barely makes rent? It could be, if we let it. Could it? Ethan looked at her with devastating gentleness. Or am I just a fantasy for you? A way to feel normal, to escape from the pressure of your real life? Because when this fantasy ends, and maybe it should end, you go back to your penthouse and your company and your world. But I'm still going to be the mechanic who fell for someone completely out of his league. You're not out of your league. I'm a guy who fixes cars, Sabrina. That's all I am. That's all I've ever been. And maybe that worked when it was just you and me and Lucy eating street food and pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. But tonight reality showed up. Your father showed up. And reality says this doesn't work. Sabrina felt something breaking inside her chest. So what? You're just going to give up? Let him win? It's not about winning or losing. It's about being realistic. Ethan's voice was so tired. I have a daughter to think about. If Lucy gets attached to you, if she starts thinking of you as part of our life, and then this falls apart, that's on me. I have to protect her. I would never hurt Lucy. Not intentionally. But Sabrina, look around. Look at where we are. This is your life. Galas and board meetings and people who spend $300 on champagne, that's never going to be my life. And eventually, you're going to get tired of slumming it with the mechanic. Eventually, you're going to want someone who belongs in your world. That's not true, isn't it? Ethan's smile was broken. Your father is going to keep pushing. Your board is going to have opinions. The media is going to have a field day. And through all of that, I'm going to be the guy who can't afford to take you anywhere nice, who doesn't understand half the conversations at your work events, who makes you look bad just by association. How long before that wears you down? Sabrina felt tears spilling over despite her best efforts. You don't get to decide how I feel. You don't get to tell me what I want. No, but I get to decide what I can handle. And I don't know if I can handle being the inadequate boyfriend of a billionaire CEO. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. So what are you saying? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his hands gripping the terrace railing like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I'm saying maybe your father is right. Maybe we should step back before this gets more complicated, before Lucy gets more attached, before we both get hurt worse than we already are. The words hit like physical blows. Sabrina couldn't breathe around the pain in her chest. Is that what you want? She managed. No. His voice broke completely. But what I want doesn't change what's realistic. Ethan, please, I should go. He wouldn't look at her. I'm sorry, Sabrina. I'm so sorry. But I think this was a mistake. All of it. He walked back into the museum, leaving Sabrina alone on the terrace with the cold November wind and the distant sound of the string quartet playing something that sounded like mourning. She didn't know how long she sat there, long enough for her tears to dry in the cold air, long enough for her phone to fill with concerned texts from colleagues who'd witnessed the confrontation, long enough for the gala to end and the crowd to thin and the museum staff to start cleaning up. When she finally went back inside, Ethan was gone. The valet confirmed he'd taken a cab 20 minutes ago. Sabrina called her own car service, let herself be driven back to her penthouse in silence, and spent the night staring at the city lights while her heart systematically shattered into smaller and smaller pieces. Her phone stayed silent. No text from Ethan, no call, nothing. By Sunday afternoon, Sabrina couldn't take it anymore. She called him. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. His voice, warm and familiar, asked her to leave a message. "Ethan, it's me. Please call me back. We need to talk about this. What happened at the gala? That wasn't real. That was my father being controlling and you being scared. The real thing is what we have when it's just us. Please don't throw that away without at least talking to me. Please." He didn't call back. She tried again Monday morning, Tuesday evening, Wednesday at lunch. Each time voicemail. Each message a little more desperate, a little more broken. By Thursday, she broke down and drove to his garage. Cole's Auto Repair looked the same as always, a modest building with 3 garage bays, hand-painted sign, tools visible through the windows. But when she went inside, it was his assistant Danny's brother who greeted her. "He's not here," the man said, not unkindly. "Took a few personal days. Family stuff."
"Do you know when he'll be back?" "Monday, maybe." He didn't say exactly. Sabrina left her number, asked him to have Ethan call. The assistant took the information with an expression that suggested he knew exactly what was happening and pitied her for it. Friday morning, a text finally arrived. But it wasn't what she'd hoped for. "Ethan, I think we need some space. This isn't working the way we both want it to. I'm sorry. You deserve someone who fits your life better.
Take care of yourself." The message was wrong in every way that mattered. Too formal, too final. Too much like a decision made from fear instead of honesty. Sabrina stared at her phone screen until the words blurred. Then she did something she'd never done in 6 years of running Valcor. She called her assistant and canceled everything for the rest of the day. Meetings, conference calls, a crucial presentation to potential investors. All of it. She went home, climbed into bed fully clothed, and let herself cry the way she hadn't allowed herself to cry since the accident that had changed everything. Great heaving sobs that felt like they were tearing her apart from the inside. Grief for what she'd had and lost. Rage at her father for poisoning something good. Fury at Ethan for giving up so easily. And underneath it all, the familiar ache of being alone again. Her phone rang sometime around sunset. Not Ethan. Her father. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice hoarse from crying. "I heard about your little meltdown," Graham said without preamble. "Canceled a day of meetings. That's not like you." "Go to hell, Dad." "Sabrina, you got what you wanted. He's gone. You scared him off with your classist bullshit and your threats and your complete inability to see me as anything except a chess piece in your legacy game. So congratulations. You win. This isn't about winning. It's always about winning with you. Always about control. You couldn't stand that I chose someone you didn't approve of, so you destroyed it. Just like you destroyed my engagement to David. Just like you sabotaged every relationship I've tried to have since the accident. You can't stand the idea that I might build a life that doesn't center around your expectations. I'm protecting you. You're suffocating me." The words came out as a scream. "I'm 32 years old. I run a billion-dollar company. I've survived more than most people face in a lifetime. But you still treat me like I'm incapable of making my own choices. Like I'm some fragile thing that needs to be managed and controlled. You're my daughter. I'm my own person, or I'm trying to be when you're not interfering." Sabrina's hands were shaking. Ethan saw me, really saw me. Not the wheelchair, not the company, not the veil name, just me. And he made me feel like I could be something more than what you decided I should be. But you couldn't allow that. You couldn't stand someone treating me like an equal instead of a legacy project. Graham was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I only want what's best for you." "No. You want what's most convenient for you. What looks best for the family image. What satisfies your need to control everything in your orbit." Sabrina felt exhausted suddenly, all the fight draining out of her. "I'm done, Dad. I'm done letting you dictate my life. Stay out of my relationships. Stay out of my choices. Or I swear I'll walk away from everything. The company, the family money, all of it." "You don't mean that. Try me." She hung up before he could respond, then turned her phone off completely. The silence in her penthouse was absolute. No Ethan calling to apologize, no Lucy sending her crayon drawings, no warmth, no laughter, no connection to anything except the cold perfection of her carefully curated life. Sabrina looked around at the expensive furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the art that cost more than most people's houses. Everything beautiful and impressive and utterly empty. She'd built this life to prove she could survive anything, to show the world that disability couldn't break her, that she could be successful and powerful and independent. But somewhere along the way, she'd confused surviving with living. And now, sitting alone in her expensive apartment with her broken heart and her shattered hope, Sabrina Vale finally understood the difference. 3 weeks passed like winter settling over a landscape, slow, cold, and absolute. Sabrina threw herself into work with the kind of manic focus that worried her assistant and impressed her board. She approved 3 new research protocols, finalized the FDA submission for their spinal interface system, and personally oversaw every detail of Valecor's largest clinical trial to date. She worked 16-hour days, answered emails at 3 in the morning, and attended every meeting, every presentation, every obligation with flawless professional precision. She did not think about Ethan, except when she was alone, which meant she thought about him constantly. Her penthouse became a museum of almost memories. The corner of the couch where they'd sat drinking terrible wine. The kitchen counter where she'd eaten takeout while he told her stories about Lucy's latest obsessions. The view of the city that reminded her of the night he'd first kissed her, gentle and certain and real. She deleted his number from her phone, then restored it from backup at 2 in the morning, then deleted it again. The cycle repeated itself with the reliability of grief. Her father called twice. She didn't answer. He sent an email that sat unopened in her inbox like a bomb she didn't have the energy to defuse. The board noticed her distraction during a quarterly review and exchanged meaningful looks that made her want to scream. Catherine Joe sent flowers with a note that read, "Heard about your breakup. These things happen. Lunch next week?" Sabrina had the flowers donated to a hospital and ignored the invitation. The only person who cut through her careful isolation was her assistant Jennifer, who'd been with her since Valecor's founding and had earned the right to speak truth. "You look terrible," Jennifer said bluntly on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks and 4 days after the gala. She set a cup of actual good coffee on Sabrina's desk, not the swill from the executive break room, and waited. "Thank you for that professional assessment," Sabrina said without looking up from her laptop. "I'm serious, you've lost weight, you're not sleeping. You snapped at Dr. Reeves yesterday for asking a completely reasonable question about the trial protocols. This isn't sustainable. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're functioning, which is different." Jennifer settled into the chair across from Sabrina's desk with the air of someone preparing for battle. "Talk to me. What happened?" "Nothing happened. A relationship didn't work out. It happens." "It wasn't nothing, and you know it." Jennifer's voice softened. "I've worked with you for 6 years. I've seen you handle hostile takeover attempts, board rebellions, your accident recovery, your broken engagement. You've never looked like this. So either this man meant something real or something else is going on that I should know about." Sabrina finally looked up from her laptop, meeting Jennifer's concerned gaze. "He meant something real. That's the problem." "Why is that a problem?" "Because real things can destroy you. Professional things, business things, those I can control. Those make sense, but this..." Sabrina gestured vaguely at the hollow feeling in her chest. "This is messy and complicated and completely outside my ability to manage. Love usually is." "I didn't say anything about love." "You didn't have to." Jennifer took a sip of her own coffee. "So what happened? You seemed happy when you mentioned him before the gala. Then after that night, radio silence, and you turned into a workaholic robot. Did your father say something?" The question hit too close to home. Sabrina's expression must have betrayed her because Jennifer's face hardened immediately. "What did Graham do?" "What he always does. Interfered, controlled, made it clear that Ethan wasn't appropriate for someone in my position." Sabrina heard the bitterness in her own voice. "And Ethan believed him. Decided we were from 2 different worlds. Ended it via text message like a coward. Or like someone who was scared," Jennifer suggested gently. "Meeting the family is terrifying under normal circumstances. Meeting Graham Vale when you're a mechanic dating his billionaire CEO daughter? That's nightmare fuel. He should have talked to me, should have trusted me enough to work through it together instead of just..." Sabrina's voice cracked. "Instead of just disappearing. Have you tried calling him?" "He won't answer. I left messages. I went to his garage. He made it clear he wants space, and I'm trying to respect that, even though it's killing me. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, studying Sabrina with the kind of perception that made her an excellent assistant and a dangerous poker player. Can I ask you something that might piss you off? You're going to ask anyway. Fair point. Why are you sitting here waiting for him to change his mind? You're Sabrina Vale. You don't wait for permission or second chances in business. You identify what you want and you make it happen. Why is your personal life different? Because business is about strategy and leverage. Relationships are about respect and consent. I can't force Ethan to want to be with me. No, but you can fight for what you want. You can make it clear that you're not giving up. You can show him that what you have is worth the complications. Jennifer leaned forward. Or you can sit here, drown yourself in work, and let your father win. Again. The words stung because they were true. Sabrina had spent 6 years building a life designed to prove she didn't need anyone. She'd become so good at being independent, at being strong, at being invulnerable, that she'd forgotten how to be brave enough to need someone. What if I fight and he still says no? Sabrina asked quietly. What if I put myself out there and he rejects me anyway? Then at least you'll know. And you can move forward instead of being stuck in this limbo wondering what might have been. Jennifer stood, smoothing her skirt. But between you and me? A man who walked into that restaurant to defend you, who danced with you at a street fair, who looked at you like you hung the moon? That man doesn't send a breakup text because he stopped caring. He does it because he's terrified and convinced himself he's not good enough. That's not indifference, Sabrina. That's fear. And fear can be addressed. After Jennifer left, Sabrina sat alone in her office, staring at the city beyond her windows. Somewhere out there, 8 blocks away, Ethan was probably elbow deep in an engine, teaching himself not to think about her the same way she was failing to not think about him. She pulled out her phone, opened her messages, and stared at the last text he'd sent. The one about needing space. The one that felt wrong in every way that mattered. Then she noticed something she'd missed in her initial heartbreak. The timestamp. He'd sent it at 11:30 on a Friday morning, right when he should have been at the garage, in the middle of his busiest hours. Ethan never texted during work unless it was urgent. Never. A cold feeling settled in Sabrina's stomach. She called his garage. The same assistant answered. Cole's Auto Repair? This is Mike. Hi, this is Sabrina Vale. I called a few weeks ago looking for Ethan. Oh, yeah, hi. Mike's voice carried discomfort. He's still not available. Is he working today? A pause. He's here, he's asked not to be disturbed. Mike, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. When did Ethan start avoiding my calls? What day exactly? Another pause, longer this time. Look, Ms. Vale, I'm not supposed to... Please, it's important, Mike sighed. He came in Thursday morning, the day after that gala thing. He looked like hell, honestly. Bruised up, moving real careful like he was hurting, said he'd had an accident, but he stopped. But what? But it didn't look like a car accident. Looked like someone had worked him over pretty good. Split lip, bruised ribs, the works. He wouldn't talk about it, just kept saying he was fine and we should mind our own business. The cold feeling in Sabrina's stomach crystallized into ice. Bruised, Thursday morning, the day after the gala. Yeah, then Friday he started acting weird, distant, wouldn't take calls. That's when he sent out those texts saying he needed space from people. Sabrina's mind was racing. Thursday morning. Ethan had been fine when he left the gala Wednesday night. Upset, yes, but physically fine. And then Thursday morning he showed up at work beaten badly enough that his assistant noticed. And Friday he sent breakup texts. This wasn't fear. This wasn't Ethan deciding they were from different worlds. This was something else entirely. Mike, I need his address, please. I think he might be in trouble. I can't just give out. I'm not going to hurt him. I'm trying to help him. Please. Mike was quiet for a long moment. Then, shit. Okay. But if he asks, you got it somewhere else. He rattled off an address Sabrina already knew. The 3rd floor walk-up with the broken elevator. She was out of her office in seconds, ignoring Jennifer's surprised questions, taking the executive elevator straight to the parking garage. Her driver started to get out of the Mercedes, but she waved him off. I'm driving myself. I need you to stay here in case I call. The drive across town felt like it took hours, even though traffic was light. Sabrina's hands were shaking on the wheel, her mind cycling through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Her father had looked satisfied after Ethan left the gala. Satisfied and certain. She'd assumed it was just his usual arrogance, his conviction that he'd won. But what if it wasn't just words? What if Graham had done something? She parked illegally in front of Ethan's building, not caring about tickets or towing. The front door was propped open with a brick, building security at its finest. She took the elevator up to the 3rd floor, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She knocked on his door. Once, twice, 3 times. "Ethan, I know you're in there. Please open the door." Silence. "I talked to Mike. I know something happened. I know you're hurt. Please, just let me see that you're okay." More silence. Then finally, the sound of a lock turning. The door opened 6 inches. Ethan stood in the gap, and Sabrina felt her breath catch. Mike hadn't been exaggerating. His left eye was swollen, the bruising faded to yellow-green but still visible. His lip was split and healing. He held himself carefully, like his ribs hurt with every breath. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "What happened to you?" "I told you, I need space." "That's not what I asked. What happened? Who did this to you?" Even as she asked, Sabrina already knew. The timing was too perfect, her father's satisfaction too complete. Ethan's expression closed down. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Ethan, please, let me in. Let me help." "You can't help. Nobody can." But he stepped back, opening the door wider. An invitation or a surrender? Sabrina wasn't sure which. The apartment looked the same as she remembered, lived in and modest and full of the small chaos that came from raising a child alone. But there were new details. Lucy's drawings on the refrigerator had increased in number. A half-assembled Lego set covered the coffee table, and on the kitchen counter, a bottle of prescription painkillers. "Where's Lucy?" Sabrina asked. "Play date at her friend Emma's house. She'll be back in an hour." Ethan moved to the couch, lowering himself carefully. "You shouldn't have come here, Sabrina." "You keep saying that. I keep not caring." She positioned her wheelchair across from him. "Tell me what happened." "Why? So you can feel guilty? So you can blame yourself?" He shook his head. "It's done. It's over. Just let it go." "I can't let it go. Not when you're sitting here looking like someone used you as a punching bag. Not when you sent me a breakup text that sounded nothing like you. Not when everything about this feels wrong." Ethan laughed bitterly. "You want to know what happened? Fine, I'll tell you what happened. Thursday morning, I was opening the garage when 2 guys in expensive suits showed up. They were very polite at first, said they had a message from your father, said Graham Vale wanted to make something clear." Sabrina felt bile rising in her throat. "What did they do?" "They took me behind the garage where there weren't any cameras, and they explained very thoroughly that I needed to stay away from you, that I was an embarrassment to the Vale family, that if I didn't end things immediately and permanently, there would be consequences." His voice was flat, empty. "Then they demonstrated what those consequences might look like. Nothing permanent. Your father's not stupid enough to cause real damage. Just enough to make the point clear." "Oh my God." Sabrina felt like she might be sick. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. Don't." He cut her off. "Don't apologize for him. You didn't do this." "But I should have known, should have anticipated that he might—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The reality of what her father had done was too monstrous. "I need to call the police. You need to file a report." "And say what? That 2 guys I can't identify beat me up because my girlfriend's father didn't approve of me? There's no evidence, no witnesses, nothing that connects back to Graham Vale except my word against his." Ethan met her eyes. "And even if I could prove it, what then? I drag you through a legal battle that destroys your relationship with your father and probably tanks Valecor's stock price? I put Lucy in danger because your father decides to escalate? No, I'm not doing that." "So you're just going to let him win? Let him scare you away?" "I'm protecting my daughter." The words came out sharp, pained. "You don't understand what it's like to have a child depending on you, to know that your choices directly impact their safety and well-being. Those men made it clear that if I didn't stay away from you, the next visit wouldn't be so gentle. They knew where Lucy goes to school, Sabrina. They knew her teacher's name, her favorite playground. They weren't just threatening me. They were threatening her. Sabrina felt tears streaming down her face. He had no right. No right to do this to you. Maybe not, but he did it anyway, and now I have to live with it. Ethan's voice broke. Do you know how hard it was to send you that text? To write those words knowing they were lies? I spent 3 hours staring at my phone trying to figure out how to protect you without destroying you, and I still got it wrong. You didn't destroy me, but you hurt me. Badly. Because I thought... Sabrina had to stop, collect herself. I thought you'd given up on us. I thought you'd decided I wasn't worth the complications. How could you think that? Ethan looked at her with such pain that it physically hurt to witness. Sabrina, you're everything. You're brilliant and brave, and you make me want to be better than I am. Walking away from you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than burying Sarah. Harder than anything. But I had to protect Lucy. I had to. I know you did. Sabrina wiped at her tears with shaking hands. But Ethan, running away isn't protecting her. It's teaching her that bullies win. That fear gets to make our choices. Is that really what you want her to learn? What I want is for her to be safe. She's not safe as long as my father thinks he can get away with this. As long as he believes violence and threats are acceptable tools for controlling people. Sabrina's voice hardened. He needs to face consequences. Real consequences. How? You said yourself that I can't prove anything. Maybe you can't, but I can sure as hell make his life difficult. Sabrina pulled out her phone. I'm calling my lawyer. We're going to explore every option. Restraining orders, corporate ethics violations, public statements, whatever it takes. Sabrina, don't what? Don't hold him accountable. Don't fight back? She looked at Ethan fiercely. You stood up for me at the Delaney when a stranger was humiliating me. You defended me at the gala when my father was trying to control me. The least I can do is stand up for you now. This is different. This is your father, your family. He stopped being family the moment he ordered someone to hurt you. Sabrina's hands were shaking with rage. He crossed a line, a big one, and I'm not letting it slide just because we share DNA. Ethan studied her for a long moment. What are you going to do? First, I'm going to talk to my lawyer about our legal options. Second, I'm going to have a conversation with my father that makes it crystal clear that if he ever threatens you or Lucy again, I will burn his entire world down. Third, she paused. Third, I'm going to ask you if there's any chance you still want this. Want us. Because I understand if you don't. I understand if what he did was too much, if the risk is too high. But if there's any part of you that still wants to try, I'm all in. Completely. Whatever it takes. Sabrina, I love you. The words came out in a rush. Unplanned, but completely true. I know it's fast and probably terrible timing, and maybe you don't feel the same way, but I love you. I love how you see me. I love how you dance with me like it's the most natural thing in the world. I love how you're an amazing father and a good man, and you make me laugh, and you call me on my bullshit. I love all of it, and I'm tired of being careful and protecting myself and settling for a half-life because I'm scared of getting hurt. Ethan was staring at her like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. You love me. Yes, terrifyingly, completely, stupidly in love with you. Even after everything, after my cowardice and the breakup text, and you weren't a coward. You were scared. There's a difference. Sabrina moved her wheelchair closer to the couch. And yeah, I'm angry that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. But I also understand why you did it. You were trying to protect Lucy. That's not cowardice. That's being a good father. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he cupped her face. His thumb brushed away tears she hadn't realized were still falling. I love you too, he said quietly. Been in love with you since you made friendship bracelets with Lucy and didn't treat it like charity work, maybe even before that. And these last 3 weeks have been hell because I couldn't call you, couldn't see you, couldn't tell you that ending things was killing me. Then don't end things. Fight with me. Let me help you. Let us figure this out together. Your father is about to learn that threatening the people I care about has serious consequences. Sabrina's voice was steel. I've been playing nice with him for too long, letting him control me because it was easier than fighting. But I'm done being easy. I'm done letting him dictate my life. Before Ethan could respond, the apartment door opened. Lucy bounced in, still wearing her adventure shirt, this one featuring a unicorn riding a motorcycle, and talking at maximum volume. "Dad, you won't believe what Emma has. She has this whole Lego castle and it's got a dragon and—" She stopped dead, her eyes going wide as she spotted Sabrina. Sabrina! The little girl launched herself at Sabrina's wheelchair with the kind of fearless enthusiasm that made Ethan wince. But Sabrina caught her easily, hugging her tight. "Hi, Lucy. Where have you been? Dad said you were busy with work, but I missed you so much, and I made you like 100 drawings, and Dad has them in his room, and—" Lucy pulled back, studying Sabrina's face with concern. "Why are you crying? Did someone make you sad? Do I need to beat them up?" Despite everything, Sabrina laughed. "No violence necessary. I'm crying because I'm happy to see you." "Oh, okay." Lucy accepted this with the casual logic of childhood. "Are you staying for dinner? Dad's making spaghetti, and he always makes way too much, so there's plenty, and we could watch a movie after if you want, and I can show you my new Lego set, and—" "Lucy, breathe," Ethan said, but he was smiling. "Let Sabrina get a word in." Lucy looked at Sabrina expectantly. "Can you stay, please? I have so much to tell you about first grade and Emma's castle, and this book I read about space." Sabrina looked at Ethan over Lucy's head. He gave a small nod, something tentative but hopeful flickering in his expression. "I'd love to stay for dinner," Sabrina said. Lucy's resulting cheer could probably be heard 3 floors down. She immediately started talking about all the things they needed to do. Spaghetti first, then Legos, then the movie, then maybe some drawing. Planning the evening with the serious focus of a military strategist. While Lucy chattered on, Ethan stood carefully and moved to the kitchen. Sabrina followed, leaving Lucy to set up her Lego display in the living room with running commentary about every piece. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked quietly, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "About fighting your father? About taking all this on?" "I'm sure about you," Sabrina said. "The rest we'll figure out as we go." "It's going to get ugly. He's not going to back down easily." "Neither am I." She moved closer, taking his hand. "Ethan, I've spent 6 years proving I could survive anything, building walls, staying safe, never letting anyone close enough to hurt me. And I was surviving. But I wasn't living. You taught me the difference. You and Lucy showed me what living actually looks like. I'm not giving that up without a fight." Ethan turned to face her fully, his hands gentle on her shoulders despite the obvious pain the movement caused him. "I don't want you to lose your relationship with your father because of me. I already lost it. The man who would order someone beaten for dating his daughter? I don't know that person. Maybe I never did." Sabrina's voice was sad but certain. "My father and I need to have a serious reckoning about boundaries and respect and what family actually means. That would be true whether you were in the picture or not." "What are you guys talking about?" Lucy appeared in the kitchen doorway, suspicious. "Are you doing serious grown-up talking? Because you both look very serious." "Just planning," Ethan said smoothly. "Sabrina and I have some things to work out." "So, are you boyfriend and girlfriend again?" Lucy asked with the directness of someone who'd spent exactly 0 time learning tact. "Because you should be. You're good together. You make Dad smile the way he used to smile with Mom." The statement hung in the air, innocent and devastating and completely honest. Ethan's expression went soft with love and pain in equal measure. "Yeah, Munchkin, we're working on being together again." "Good," Lucy nodded with satisfaction. "Because I like Sabrina, and she makes good friendship bracelets, and she knows about rockets and space, and she doesn't treat me like I'm dumb." "You're not dumb," Sabrina said firmly. "You're one of the smartest people I know." Lucy beamed. "See? She gets it. Can I show her my Legos now?" "After dinner. Go wash your hands." As Lucy ran off to the bathroom, still talking to herself about Lego castles and dragons, Ethan pulled Sabrina close. The kiss was gentle, mindful of his split lip, but full of everything they hadn't been able to say over the past 3 weeks. When they pulled apart, Sabrina rested her forehead against his. "We're going to be okay," she said. "All 3 of us. Whatever happens with my father, whatever complications come up, we're going to be okay." "How are you so sure?" "Because I'm Sabrina Vale. I've survived drunk drivers, hostile board meetings, and building a $1 billion company from a hospital bed. Your confidence in what we can overcome should be pretty high right now. Ethan laughed, wincing slightly at the pain it caused his ribs. Fair point. When you put it that way, one controlling billionaire father seems almost manageable. Almost, Sabrina agreed. But first, spaghetti. Then Legos. Then we plan our strategy for making sure my father never threatens anyone I love ever again. Strategy planning over Legos. Very romantic. Romance is overrated. I prefer partnership.
Lucky for you, Ethan said, kissing her forehead. You've got both. They made dinner together, Ethan cooking, Sabrina providing dubious assistance and better conversation, Lucy offering running commentary on everything from the proper amount of garlic to use to whether dragons preferred spaghetti or pizza. It was chaotic and imperfect, and nothing like the carefully controlled life Sabrina had built for herself. It was also the most real thing she'd felt in 6 years. And later, after Lucy had shown off her entire Lego collection and fallen asleep during the movie, curled between Sabrina and Ethan on the couch, Sabrina looked at the two of them, this mechanic and his daughter who'd somehow become her whole world, and made a decision. She was done running, done hiding, done letting fear or her father or anyone else dictate what her life could look like. Tomorrow, she'd call her lawyer. She'd start the process of holding Graham accountable. She'd figure out how to protect Ethan and Lucy while also fighting back against the man who'd controlled her for too long. But tonight, she let herself simply be here, in this small apartment with the broken elevator, with a man who saw her completely and a little girl who made friendship bracelets and asked impossible questions, with the family she'd chosen instead of the one she'd been born into. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. And she was finally brave enough to claim it. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline winter clarity that made the city look sharp-edged and unforgiving. Sabrina sat in her office before dawn, watching the sun climb over the skyline, while her lawyer, Patricia Mendoza, reviewed the documentation she'd spent the weekend compiling. Patricia was in her 50s, steel-haired and sharper than any scalpel, with a reputation for destroying opposing counsel with surgical precision. She'd handled Sabrina's contract negotiations, her patent disputes, and the messy dissolution of her engagement 6 years ago. If anyone could find a way to hold Graham Vale accountable, it was Patricia. "This is thin," Patricia said finally, setting down the folder. "Ethan can't identify the men. No security footage, no witnesses. Your father's too smart to leave a paper trail connecting him to hired muscle. I know it's thin, but there has to be something we can do. Criminally? Without evidence, the police won't touch it. Graham Vale is too connected, too powerful. Even if Ethan filed a report, it would disappear into bureaucratic limbo." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "But civilly? That's a different story. We could file for a restraining order on Ethan's behalf. We'd need to demonstrate a pattern of harassment and credible threat of future harm. Would it work? Maybe. Depends on the judge. But even if we get the order, violating it only results in fines or minimal jail time for someone with Graham's resources. It's a deterrent, not a solution." Patricia studied Sabrina carefully. "What you're really asking me is how to neutralize your father's ability to interfere in your life. That's a bigger question with bigger answers." "I'm listening." "Graham's power comes from 3 sources: his wealth, his board position at Vale Industries, and his social influence. We can't touch his wealth directly. That's his money, not yours. But the board position? That's interesting." Patricia pulled out another folder. "Vale Industries is technically a family holding company, but it's structured with a board of directors. Graham is chairman, you're a board member, so is your Uncle Robert. If you wanted to challenge Graham's leadership, you could call for a vote of no confidence." Sabrina felt her stomach twist. That would destroy him. It would remove his institutional power. Whether that constitutes destruction is philosophical. Patricia's expression was neutral, professional. "But there's a nuclear option if you want real leverage. Go public." "Public how?" "Press conference. You tell your story, not the assault on Ethan, since we can't prove that, but the larger pattern of control. Your father's interference in your relationships, his attempts to dictate your personal life, his belief that he gets to decide who you associate with. Frame it as a woman fighting for autonomy against patriarchal control. The media would eat it up. Tech CEO stands up to controlling billionaire father. It's perfect. It would humiliate him. It would embarrass him, yes,
It would also make him radioactive. Nobody wants to be associated with the out-of-touch billionaire who tried to control his disabled daughter's love life. His social capital would evaporate overnight. Patricia paused. But Sabrina, once you do this, there's no going back. You'll damage your relationship with your father beyond repair. Maybe permanently. You need to be absolutely certain this is what you want. Sabrina stared out at the city, thinking about the past 6 years. About every relationship Graham had sabotaged with pointed comments and social pressure. About her engagement to David, which had crumbled under Graham's obvious disappointment. About the constant weight of expectations, the feeling that her life belonged to the Vale legacy more than it belonged to her. About Ethan, beaten and scared because he dared to love her. About Lucy, threatened by proxy because her father had chosen the wrong woman. Set up the press conference, Sabrina said quietly. But first, I'm going to give my father one chance to make this right. The Vale estate sat on 5 acres of manicured grounds in the wealthiest suburb the city had to offer. Sabrina had grown up in the main house, a sprawling Georgian mansion that looked like it belonged in a period drama about aristocratic decline. She'd learned to navigate its marble halls in her wheelchair after the accident, had endured countless formal dinners in its cavernous dining room, had felt small and insufficient in rooms designed to impress rather than comfort. She arrived unannounced Tuesday afternoon, rolling through the front entrance with the kind of authority that made the household staff step aside without question. Graham was in his study, because Graham was always in his study at this hour, conducting business or managing investments or doing whatever it was that occupied men who'd inherited enough wealth to never actually have to work. He looked up when she entered, his expression flickering through surprise before settling into wary neutrality. Sabrina, I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk, now. Graham set down his phone with deliberate care. If this is about that mechanic... His name is Ethan Cole. And yes, this is about him. This is about you sending men to beat him up. This is about you threatening a 6-year-old child to control my personal life. This is about you crossing every possible line because you can't stand that I made a choice you didn't approve of. I don't know what you're talking about. Graham's voice was smooth, practiced. If something happened to Mr. Cole, that's unfortunate, but I had nothing to do with it. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not about this. Sabrina's hands were shaking with rage. 2 men in expensive suits showed up at his garage the day after the gala. They knew details about his daughter, her school, her teacher, her routine. They delivered a message from you. Then they beat him badly enough that he's still recovering, so don't sit there and pretend you had nothing to do with it. Even if such an incident occurred, and I'm not admitting anything, you have no proof of my involvement. You're right. I don't have proof. Not the kind that would hold up in criminal court. Sabrina pulled a folder from her bag and tossed it onto Graham's desk. But I have enough for a civil case. Enough for a restraining order. Enough to make your life very, very difficult. Graham opened the folder, scanning the contents with the kind of attention he usually reserved for quarterly earnings reports. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture tightened. This is speculation and circumstantial evidence at best. Maybe. But combined with a press conference where I detail your pattern of controlling behavior, your interference in my relationships, and your apparent belief that you get to dictate every aspect of my life. The court of public opinion doesn't require the same burden of proof as criminal court, and you care a lot more about your reputation than you do about legal technicalities. You would publicly humiliate your own father? You would have someone beaten for dating your daughter, Sabrina shot back. So yes, I would absolutely expose your behavior if that's what it takes to protect the people I love. Graham stood, moving to the window that overlooked the estate grounds. For a long moment, he was silent, his hands clasped behind his back in a pose Sabrina recognized from childhood. The stance he took when he was thinking, calculating, planning his next move. You've always been stubborn, he said finally, even as a child. Your mother used to say you inherited my determination and her compassion. A dangerous combination. Don't talk about Mom. She would be horrified by what you've done. Your mother understood the importance of legacy, of maintaining standards. My mother understood love, real love, not the conditional version you offer where I'm only acceptable if I meet your requirements. Sabrina's voice cracked slightly. She would never have approved of you threatening a child. She would never have condoned violence against someone whose only crime was caring about me. Graham turned from the window, and for the first time, Sabrina saw something that might have been uncertainty in his expression. I was protecting you. From what? From being happy? From having a life outside Valecore and the family legacy? From being treated like a complete person instead of a chess piece in your social strategy? From making a mistake that would haunt you for years? From choosing someone completely unsuitable who would eventually leave you or resent you or... He stopped, something complicated crossing his face. Or what? Sabrina pressed. Or make you feel inadequate, Graham said quietly. The way your engagement to David ended. You were devastated. I watched you spiral into isolation and work obsession, and I swore I wouldn't let anyone hurt you like that again. The admission hung in the air between them. Sabrina felt her anger falter slightly, confronted with something she hadn't expected, genuine concern, however misguided. Dad, David left because he couldn't handle my disability, because he was weak and selfish and ultimately didn't love me enough. But Ethan isn't David. Ethan sees my wheelchair and doesn't flinch. He dances with me in public. He treats me like I'm capable and strong and worthy of love exactly as I am. He's the opposite of inadequate. He's everything I didn't know I could have. He's a mechanic who makes $40,000 a year. And I'm a CEO who makes 100 times that. So what? Money doesn't make someone worthy. Success doesn't make someone deserving of love. Ethan is kind and honest and brave, and he makes me want to be better. That's worth more than any bank account or social pedigree. Graham's jaw tightened. The world will judge you. They'll say he's using you for your money. They'll say you're slumming it with someone beneath your station. They'll question your judgment, your competence. Let them question. I've spent 6 years proving my competence. I've built Valecore into an industry leader. I've advanced neural regeneration research by a decade. I've done all of it while managing a disability and dealing with your constant interference. I think I've earned the right to choose my own partner without your approval. And when it falls apart, when the reality of your different lives becomes too much, when he gets tired of the scrutiny or you get tired of defending him, then we'll deal with it together. Like adults, like partners. Sabrina moved closer to her father's desk. But here's what won't happen. You won't interfere. You won't threaten. You won't send your thugs to intimidate or harm anyone I care about. Because if you do, I will destroy you. Publicly, professionally, completely. I will use every resource I have to make sure the world knows exactly who Graham Vale really is. Do you understand me? Graham studied her for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired in a way Sabrina had never heard before. You've become very hard, Sabrina. You made me hard, you and the accident and everyone who treated me like I was broken. I had to become hard to survive. But Ethan makes me soft again. He reminds me that being vulnerable isn't the same as being weak. And I'm not giving that up. Not for you. Not for anyone. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 6 years of accumulated hurt and control and misguided protection. Finally, Graham returned to his desk, sinking into his chair like a man suddenly aware of his age. What do you want from me? He asked. I want you to leave us alone. Completely. No more interference. No more threats. No more attempts to control who I date or how I live my life. You get to be my father, but you don't get to be my puppeteer. And if I agree to this, then I cancel the press conference. I don't pursue the restraining order. We try to rebuild some kind of relationship where you respect my autonomy, and I don't have to keep you at arm's length for my own protection. And if I don't agree, then I go public. I tell everyone about your controlling behavior. I call for a vote of no confidence at Vale Industries. I make it my mission to ensure you face consequences for what you've done. Your choice, Dad. Respect my boundaries or lose me entirely. Graham was quiet for a long time, his fingers steepled beneath his chin in thought. Sabrina waited, her heart pounding but her resolve absolute. She'd meant every word. She would burn every bridge if that's what it took to protect Ethan and Lucy. He makes you happy? Graham asked finally. This mechanic? His name is Ethan. And yes, he makes me happy. He makes me feel seen and valued and capable of more than just running a company. He reminds me that my life is mine to live, not yours to orchestrate. And the child? Lucy? Is wonderful, smart and funny and completely herself. She doesn't treat me differently because of the wheelchair. She just treats me like Sabrina. It's remarkable how simple that is, and how rare. Graham nodded slowly, something in his expression softening almost imperceptibly. Your mother would have liked that. She always said you needed people who saw you, not just the Vale name or the company or the disability, people who saw Sabrina. She did say that. Right before she died, I remember. I've made mistakes with you. The admission came out stiff, uncomfortable, like the words physically pained him. After the accident, after your mother's death, I thought control was the same as protection. I thought if I could manage every aspect of your life, I could prevent you from getting hurt again. But I see now that I was wrong. I was hurting you in my attempt to protect you. Sabrina felt tears threatening. Dad, I won't apologize for wanting to protect you, but I will apologize for the methods I used, for the threats, for... He paused. For having those men visit Mr. Cole. That was wrong. Unforgivably wrong. I let my fear for you override my judgment. Your fear? I lost your mother. I nearly lost you in that accident. The thought of watching you get hurt again, emotionally, professionally, anyway, it terrifies me. But that doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing excuses that. It was the closest to a real apology Sabrina had ever heard from her father. Graham Vale didn't do vulnerability, didn't admit mistakes, didn't show weakness. The fact that he was doing so now, however awkwardly, meant something. I need your word, Sabrina said firmly. Your absolute word that you'll leave Ethan and Lucy alone, that you won't interfere in my relationship or try to control my personal life. Can you give me that? Graham met her eyes. You have my word. I will not interfere. I will not threaten. I will... He hesitated, then continued. I will try to be a better father, one who respects your autonomy even when I disagree with your choices. That's all I'm asking. Respect, not agreement, just respect. Then you have it. Graham stood, moving around the desk. For a moment, Sabrina thought he might try to hug her, but he stopped just short, his hands awkward at his sides. For what it's worth, I would like to meet him properly. Mr. Cole, Ethan, under better circumstances. Why? Because if he makes my daughter happy, if he treats you with the respect and care you deserve, then I should at least know the man. No threats, no judgment, just a dinner, conversation, a chance to see what you see in him. Sabrina studied her father carefully, looking for the trap, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. But all she saw was a tired older man trying, however clumsily, to bridge a gap that had grown dangerously wide. I'll talk to Ethan, see if he's willing. But Dad, if you make him feel unwelcome, if you're anything less than civil, I'm done. Completely done. Clear? Crystal clear. She left the estate feeling lighter than she had in weeks, though she knew this was only the first step. Trust would take time to rebuild. Graham's word would need to be tested. But for the first time, there was a possibility that her relationship with her father could be something other than a battlefield. That evening, Sabrina met Ethan at his apartment. Lucy was already asleep. It was nearly 9 o'clock, well past her bedtime on a school night. Ethan looked better than he had days earlier, the bruising fading to barely there shadows, his movements less careful. How did it go? He asked as soon as she was through the door. Sabrina told him everything, the confrontation, Graham's admission, his promise to back off, his request to meet Ethan properly. She watched Ethan's expression cycle through disbelief, anger, cautious hope, and finally skeptical acceptance. You believe him? Ethan asked when she finished. You think he'll actually keep his word? I think he'll try. Whether he succeeds is another question. But Ethan, he knows I'm serious. He knows I'll follow through on my threats if he interferes again. That's leverage we didn't have before. And you want me to have dinner with him? Only if you want to. I won't force it. I know what he did to you was... She stopped, struggling for words adequate to the violation. I know it was unforgivable. If you never want to be in the same room with him again, I understand completely. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the arm of the couch in a nervous rhythm. Finally, he spoke. Lucy asked me yesterday why you stopped coming around. I told her we'd had a disagreement with your father, but that we were working it out. She said, and I quote, "Sometimes grown-ups are dumb, but families figure it out." Then she went back to her Legos like she'd just solved world peace. Sabrina smiled despite the weight of the conversation. She's not wrong. No, she's not. And the thing is, if we're going to make this work, if we're really going to try, then eventually I need to find some way to coexist with your father. Not for him, for you, for us. Because cutting him out entirely means you lose your family, and I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'd choose you over him in a heartbeat. I know you would, but you shouldn't have to. So yeah, I'll have dinner with Graham Vale, one dinner, neutral ground, and if he steps out of line even once, I'm done. But I'll give him one chance, for you. Sabrina felt overwhelming love for this man who'd been threatened and beaten and had every reason to refuse, yet was willing to try anyway because he understood what family meant to her. "Thank you," she whispered, moving close enough to rest her forehead against his. "You're remarkable, you know that?" "I'm terrified is what I am. Your father could buy and sell my entire life with pocket change. But he can't buy what we have. That's worth more than any amount of money. When did you become such a romantic?" "Since I fell in love with a mechanic who dances with me in street fairs and makes terrible spaghetti." "My spaghetti is perfectly adequate." "It's truly not," Sabrina said, kissing him softly. "But I love you anyway." The dinner was scheduled for 2 weeks later at a restaurant Sabrina chose specifically for its neutral ground status. Nice enough to satisfy Graham's standards, casual enough that Ethan wouldn't feel completely out of place, with excellent accessibility and a private dining room where they could talk without an audience. Sabrina spent the intervening weeks working with Patricia to draft formal documents establishing boundaries between Graham and her personal life, consulting with Valecor's board about potential conflicts of interest, and generally preparing for every possible contingency. She also spent time with Ethan and Lucy, rebuilding the easy rhythm they'd established before everything fell apart. Lucy was delighted to have Sabrina back in her life. She showed off her latest school projects with pride, asked a million questions about space and science and why wheelchairs didn't come with built-in rocket boosters, and generally reminded everyone that childhood joy was the best antidote to adult complications. The night of the dinner arrived cold and clear, the kind of December evening where the city lights seemed to burn brighter against the dark sky. Ethan wore the same suit he'd worn to the gala, looking uncomfortable but determined. Sabrina wore a simple dress and her favorite blazer, professional but not intimidating. They arrived at the restaurant together, hands linked in a gesture of solidarity. Graham was already there, seated at a table in the private room, looking more uncertain than Sabrina had ever seen him. "Sabrina, Mr. Cole." Graham stood, extending his hand to Ethan. Ethan took it, the handshake firm but brief. "Mr. Vale, thanks for the invitation." They sat, and for a moment, awkward silence filled the space. Then Graham cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology, Mr. Cole." "Ethan, a real one, not the corporate version I'm used to giving. What I did, having those men threaten you, was wrong, indefensible. I let my fear for my daughter override basic human decency, and you paid the price for that. I'm sorry." Ethan studied Graham carefully. "Why should I believe you won't do it again?" "Because Sabrina has made it very clear that if I do, I lose her entirely. And because," Graham paused, choosing his words carefully, "because I saw how she looked when she talked about you, the way her whole face changed. She hasn't looked like that since before the accident, before her mother died. And I realized that my fear of her getting hurt was causing more damage than any relationship ever could." You threatened my daughter," Ethan said quietly. 6-year-old girl who's never hurt anyone in her life. Your men knew her school, her teacher's name. That's not just crossing a line, that's obliterating it. I know, and I cannot adequately apologize for that. If I could undo it, I would. But I can't. All I can do is promise it won't happen again and hope that eventually you can forgive me enough to tolerate my presence in Sabrina's life. The waiter arrived with menus, providing a welcome interruption to the tension. They ordered, small talk about food preferences filling the space where heavier conversations had been. And slowly, tentatively, they began to talk. Graham asked about Ethan's garage, and for once, actually listened to the answers. Ethan asked about Vale Industries, navigating the conversation with more grace than he probably felt. Sabrina watched them both, ready to intervene if necessary, but letting them find their own rhythm. "Lucy sounds like quite a character," Graham said as their meals arrived. Sabrina mentioned she's interested in space? Obsessed is more like it, Ethan said, and his whole expression softened when he talked about his daughter. She wants to be an astronaut, or a paleontologist, or possibly both. She's 6, so her career plans change weekly. Sabrina wanted to be a marine biologist at that age, Graham said, a small smile touching his mouth. She was convinced she could teach dolphins to speak English if we just let her spend enough time at the aquarium. I was very committed to that plan, Sabrina said, until I discovered I get seasick. Hence the pivot to biotech, Graham finished. He looked at Ethan. She's always been brilliant, even as a child. Her mother used to say she could solve problems the rest of us couldn't even see. She still does that, Ethan agreed. Terrifying and impressive in equal measure. They talked through dinner, sometimes stilted, sometimes surprisingly natural. Graham told stories about Sabrina's childhood, embarrassing but affectionate tales that made her groan and Ethan laugh. Ethan talked about rebuilding his life after Sarah's death, about learning to be both mother and father to Lucy, about finding joy in small moments and simple things. And gradually, Sabrina watched the impossible happen. Her father and the man she loved began to understand each other. "Can I ask you something?" Graham said as dessert arrived. "And please, be honest. What are your intentions with my daughter?" "Dad," Sabrina started, but Ethan held up a hand. "It's a fair question." He looked directly at Graham. "My intentions are to love her as completely as I know how, to respect her intelligence and her autonomy, to support her work even when I don't understand half of it, to make her laugh when things get hard, to be a partner, not a burden, and eventually, if she'll have me, to marry her and build a life together where we both get to be fully ourselves." The statement hung in the air. Sabrina's heart stopped, then started again double time. "Eventually," she managed. "As in you've thought about marriage?" "Of course I've thought about marriage. I'm in love with you." "What did you think I was doing here?" "I don't know. Dating? Seeing where things go?" "I know where things are going," Ethan said firmly. "They're going toward you and me and Lucy as a family, toward building something permanent, unless—" Uncertainty flickered across his face. "Unless that's not what you want?" "Of course that's what I want, you idiot. I've been in love with you since you wiped salsa off my shoe without making it weird." Graham cleared his throat pointedly. "I'm still sitting here." "Right, sorry." Sabrina felt her face heating. "We're having a moment." "I noticed." But Graham was smiling, a real smile, warm and genuine. "For what it's worth, Ethan, I think your intentions are admirable. And if Sabrina wants to marry you, you have my blessing, for whatever that's worth after everything." "It's worth something," Ethan said quietly. "Not everything, but something." They finished dinner in considerably lighter spirits than they'd started. Graham picked up the check despite Ethan's protests, and they parted outside the restaurant with handshakes that felt less hostile and more like the beginning of tentative peace. In the car back to Ethan's apartment, Sabrina turned to him. "So, marriage, huh? Too fast?" Ethan looked nervous. "I probably should have led with that differently. Maybe not in front of your father, possibly over candlelight or—" "It's perfect," Sabrina interrupted. "Completely imperfect and absolutely perfect, just like us." "Is that a yes?" "That's a, let's talk about it when we get home and Lucy's asleep and we can do this properly." "Deal." But when they got home, Lucy was still awake, sitting up in bed with one of her space books. When she saw them, her face lit up. "Did you have dinner with Sabrina's dad? Was he nice? Did you tell him about me?" "We did. He was mostly nice, and yes, I told him about you," Ethan said, settling on the edge of her bed. "He wants to meet you sometime." "Really?" Lucy's eyes went wide. "He's really rich, right? Does he have a castle? Can I ask him about his castle?" "He doesn't have a castle, Munchkin. Just a big house." "That's boring. He should get a castle." Lucy looked at Sabrina seriously. "Are you going to marry my dad?" The question was so direct, so quintessentially Lucy, that Sabrina couldn't help but laugh. "Would that be okay with you, if I married your dad?" Lucy considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "Would you live with us?" "Eventually, yes. We'd need a bigger place, somewhere with an elevator." "And could we get a dog?" "That's negotiable." "And would you be like my mom? Not my real mom, because I had a mom and she died, but like my other mom?" Sabrina felt her throat tighten. "I would love to be your other mom. if that's what you want. Okay. Lucy nodded decisively. Then, yes, you should marry Dad, because he's happier when you're around and you're fun, and you know about rockets. Those are good reasons. Those are excellent reasons, Sabrina agreed. Plus, then we'd be a family, a real one. Lucy yawned hugely. Families are good. Miss Martinez says families come in all shapes. Miss Martinez is very wise, Ethan said, tucking his daughter back under her covers. Now sleep. We'll talk more about families and weddings and definitely not happening dogs tomorrow. Love you, Dad. Love you, Sabrina. Love you too, sweetheart, they said in near unison. After Lucy drifted off, Sabrina and Ethan sat together on the couch in the living room's dim light. The city hummed outside the windows, eternal, indifferent, full of its own million stories. But inside this small apartment, their story was taking shape. So, Ethan said, my daughter gave her approval. Your father gave his blessing. We've survived assault, separation, and terrible family dinners. I think that means we're ready for the next step. Which is? He slid off the couch, kneeling beside her wheelchair. From his pocket, he pulled a small box. Nothing expensive or elaborate, just a simple ring with a single stone that caught the light. It was Sarah's, he said quietly. Her engagement ring. I've been carrying it around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. And I realized tonight that the right moment is just whenever we're together. So Sabrina Vale, brilliant CEO, neural regeneration pioneer, the woman who taught me that broken things can create something beautiful. Will you marry me? Sabrina felt tears streaming down her face, her hands shaking as she reached for him. Yes, absolutely yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. Then he kissed her, deep and sweet and full of promise. We're really doing this, Sabrina said when they finally pulled apart. Building a life together, you, me, and Lucy. We're really doing this, Ethan confirmed. Fair warning, though, it's going to be complicated. Merging our lives, dealing with your work schedule, navigating Lucy's needs, managing your father's involvement. I run a billion-dollar biotech company. Complicated is my specialty. Also fair, but this is different. This is personal complicated. Good thing I love you enough to figure it out. They stayed up late that night, planning their future in broad strokes and fine details. They'd need a new place, somewhere accessible with space for Lucy and close to her school. They'd need to navigate the media attention that would inevitably follow when news broke that Sabrina Vale was engaged to her mechanic boyfriend. They'd need to figure out how to blend their drastically different financial situations without making Ethan feel inadequate or Sabrina feel like she was buying his affection. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be real. 6 months later, on a May afternoon warm with the promise of summer, they held a small engagement celebration behind the garage where they'd first reconnected after that terrible 3-week separation. The space had been transformed. String lights hung between buildings, folding chairs arranged in neat rows, tables covered with mismatched cloths holding homemade food from Miguel's and other neighborhood favorites. It was nothing like the galas and formal events Sabrina usually attended. It was better. Lucy served as unofficial flower girl despite there being no actual ceremony yet, scattering petals with theatrical flair while wearing her fanciest adventure shirt, this one featuring a princess riding a motorcycle. Ethan's garage colleagues mixed with Sabrina's research team in conversations that probably made no sense to anyone but somehow worked anyway. Jennifer was there, looking pleased with herself for pushing Sabrina to fight for what she wanted. Even Patricia Mendoza showed up, nursing a beer and looking almost relaxed. And Graham came. He arrived late, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes, clearly out of his element among mechanics and scientists and people who measured success in things other than stock portfolios. But he came. Sabrina watched him approach Ethan, saw them shake hands with considerably more warmth than they'd had at that first dinner, saw Graham crouch down to Lucy's level as she explained in great detail about the flower petals and why princesses should definitely ride motorcycles. Your father's trying, Ethan said softly, appearing beside Sabrina with 2 glasses of champagne, not the terrible $300 kind, but something simple and honest that actually tasted good. He is, Sabrina agreed, still hovering, still controlling in small ways, but trying. That's all we can ask. They watched the party unfold around them, their chosen family, cobbled together from broken pieces and second chances. Mike from the garage was teaching one of Sabrina's lab assistants about carburetor mechanics. Mrs. Chen from Ethan's building was swapping dumpling recipes with Miguel. Lucy was giving an impromptu lecture about space exploration to anyone who would listen. "You know what the best part is?" Sabrina said, leaning against Ethan's shoulder. "What?" "I spent 6 years after my accident trying to prove I didn't need anyone. Building walls, staying safe, convincing myself that independence was the same as strength. And now I'm here, surrounded by people I need and who need me back, and I've never felt stronger." "That's because real strength isn't about not needing anyone," Ethan said. "It's about being brave enough to let people in even when it's terrifying." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a mechanic who got lucky enough to walk past the right restaurant window at the right time." "You're so much more than that." "To you, maybe. And honestly, that's all that matters." As the sun dropped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Ethan took Sabrina's hand and led her to a clear space among the tables. Music was playing from someone's phone. Not elegant string quartets, but something with soul and rhythm and heart. "Dance with me," he said, just like he had at the street fair all those months ago. "Always," she replied. They moved together in their own unique rhythm, his hands on her wheelchair, her hands controlling the spin and glide, both of them creating something that was neither traditional dance nor something less, but something entirely their own. Around them, other couples joined in. Lucy grabbed Graham's hands and demanded he dance with her, and Sabrina watched her father, stiff, uncertain, completely out of his element, let himself be pulled into a clumsy waltz with his granddaughter-to-be. Later, when the party was winding down and Lucy had fallen asleep on a bench with her head in Graham's lap, Sabrina found a quiet moment with her father. "Thank you for coming," she said simply. "Thank you for inviting me. After everything, I wasn't sure you would. You're my father. You made mistakes, but you're trying to do better. That matters." Graham looked down at Lucy, something tender in his expression. "She reminds me of you at that age. Fearless, convinced she can do anything. She can do anything. We just have to make sure we don't teach her otherwise. I won't make the same mistakes with her that I made with you. I promise you that." "I know you won't, because I'll be watching." Graham smiled, rueful but genuine. "I'd expect nothing less." As the evening finally ended and guests began filtering away, Sabrina found herself sitting with Ethan in the back of his truck, looking up at stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. "So," Ethan said, "we're really doing this, getting married, becoming a family." "We are. Terrified yet?" "Absolutely. You?" "Completely. But also happier than I've ever been." "Same." He pulled her close, his warmth solid and real against her side. "I love you, Sabrina Vale. I love your brilliant mind and your terrible dancing and your refusal to let anything, disability, wealth differences, controlling fathers, actual assault, stop you from living your life on your terms. I love you too, Ethan Cole. I love your gentle strength and your devotion to Lucy and the way you see me completely and love me anyway. Not anyway. Because..." They sat there in comfortable silence as the city lights flickered around them, as car sounds and distant music painted the soundtrack of their lives, as the future stretched ahead full of complications and possibilities in equal measure. 3 months later, on a beach just outside the city, Sabrina and Ethan were married. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, with Lucy serving as flower girl and ring bearer simultaneously. Graham walked Sabrina down the makeshift aisle formed in the sand, his hand steady on her shoulder, his pride evident despite his attempts at stoic composure. The ceremony was officiated by Judge Martinez, the mother of Lucy's teacher, who'd gotten ordained online specifically for this occasion. The vows were personal and honest, full of promises about partnership and respect and navigating life's complications together. When Ethan kissed his bride, the small crowd cheered. Lucy shouted, "Finally!" loud enough to be heard 3 beaches over, and somewhere above them, seagulls circled in the ocean breeze, witnesses to a love story that had started with humiliation and threat, but had transformed into something unbreakable. After the ceremony, after the simple reception with its mismatched chairs and homemade food and genuine laughter, Ethan took Sabrina to the edge of the water. The tide was coming in, painting the sand in patterns of foam and retreat. The sun was setting in brilliant shades that no photograph could capture. "Ready?" he asked. "For what?" "For this." He moved behind her wheelchair, and together they rolled forward until the water lapped at the wheels, at her feet, cold and alive and absolutely real. Then, with infinite patience and care, Ethan helped her stand. Her legs trembled. They always trembled, the partial sensation and limited control a gift from years of research and therapy, but never a cure. His arms were strong around her, his shoulders solid beneath her hands. And there, with the ocean washing over her feet and the sky burning gold above them, and the man she loved holding her steady, Sabrina stood. Not because she was healed, not because the wheelchair had disappeared, not because anything fundamental had changed about her body or her limitations. She stood because she'd finally learned that strength wasn't about not needing support. It was about being brave enough to accept it, about letting someone see you completely, your brilliance and your brokenness, your power and your vulnerability, and choosing to love all of it anyway. "I've got you," Ethan whispered against her hair. "I know," Sabrina replied. "I've always known." The water moved around them in eternal rhythm. The city glittered in the distance, full of a million other stories unfolding simultaneously. And in this moment, standing in the ocean with a mechanic who'd seen her truly, loved by a little girl who taught her that family was choice, reconciled with a father who'd learned that control wasn't the same as love, Sabrina Vale finally understood something she'd spent 6 years learning. She wasn't broken. She'd never been broken. She'd been waiting to find the people who could see past the cracks to the strength underneath. The people who understood that wheelchairs were just wheels, that disability was just difference, that love wasn't about perfect bodies or perfect circumstances, but about perfectly imperfect humans choosing each other day after day after day. The waves crashed. The sun set. Her husband held her close. And Sabrina, standing between sea and sky with the life she'd chosen spread before her like a gift, finally felt completely, unequivocally whole.